Chapter 1922. Could it be that fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't have innocent lives on his hands? Shang Chung sneered. Xiaohua looked up at the sky. Of course I do, but I dare to face the heavenly Tao head-on. I dare to guarantee that every one of them is a person I must kill. Of course, this is my own admission. If the heavenly Tao abandons me, someone will naturally kill me. Maybe fellow Taoist Shang is one of them? Ha ha ha, Shang Chung roared with laughter, and then he pointed with his finger and said, I've seen many hypocrites like you on the Dawnrain continent. It's none other than you've taken a fancy to my storage pouch or my women. If you want them, then feel free to come and take them. Why speak so many hypocritical reasons? Fellow Taoist Shang might be right. I might want to kill you. However, since you killed shopkeeper Han, aren't you giving me a reason? Xiaohua didn't hide his intention to kill Shang Chung. If you want to make a move, then make a move. I can't stand seeing you big sex kill people and set up a memorial arch. Shang Chung clapped his hands, and a dozen or so bird-like pitch-black yellow talismans flew out. Each yellow talisman revealed a strange trajectory and flew towards Xiaohua from all directions. Although Xiaohua heard that Shang Chung was a cultivator of the 10,000 Poisons sect, he felt hatred in his heart. He might not necessarily kill him, but since Shang Chung killed Han Jiang in front of him, what else could Xiaohua say? He wanted him to kill Shang Chung. Why should he be polite? Even if Shang Cheng's words were clear and logical, why would Xiaohua care about other people's opinions? Seeing the dozen or so yellow talismans flying out, Xiaohua was very surprised. He said with a smile, Sure enough, it's the 10,000 Poisons sect. These yellow talismans are a bit strange. They're more than strange. I have a lot of techniques to pull out tendons and peel off skin. You can slowly enjoy them. Seeing that Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry to dodge, a sinister smile appeared on Shang Cheng's face. He made a hand seal again, and his two hands seemed to gradually turn pitch black. More than 10 yellow talismans simultaneously exploded. More than 10 jet black balls wrapped around Xiaohua like drops of ink, then turned into raindrops and rained down on Xiaohua's face. Ouch! With a sweep of his divine sense, Xiaohua knew that this item contained a deadly poison. He hurriedly waved his hands, and 2 strands of true samadhi fire appeared in his hands. Following the urging of Xiaohua's magic power, it suddenly transformed into a thin wall of fire, protecting him. Sizzle, sizzle, the poisonous water hit the wall of fire. It was like rain meeting fire, and it was easily burned away without a trace. True samadhi fire? Seeing this, Shang Chung couldn't help but be alarmed. The yellow talismans of his secret technique were the best at corroding a cultivator's protective brilliance. No matter if it was the Vajra talisman, Iron Cloak talisman, or even the protective brilliance of a golden core cultivator, they would all have an effect. However, this poisonous water was most afraid of fire attribute magic tools and thunder attribute magic tools. This was also one of the reasons why Shang Chung wasn't willing to fight with Xiaohua. True samadhi fire was the essence of fire. Very few cultivators were proficient in it. Even the golden core cultivator of the Thunder Palace, Zhen Yi, only had a rough understanding of it. Shang Chung never thought that he would be able to see it in the hands of an early Foundation establishment cultivator. Moreover, what he saw wasn't just a strand, but a wall of true samadhi fire. Go! Shang Chung hesitated for a moment. However, the seal in his hands had already been formed. Thus, he shouted and spread open his 10 fingers. 2 faint balls of mist emitting a fishy smell formed in the hollow of his palms. He then waved his hand, and the balls of water spiraled out. Moreover, as they flew, the dense water-type spiritual energy of heaven and earth around Han Jiangji was absorbed into the balls of mist, causing them to expand. Xiaohua laughed loudly. He also waved his hand. He didn't use any true samadhi fire. Instead, a dozen fireball talismans flew out and smashed towards the 2 balls of poisonous water. With a series of rumbling sounds, the fireball talismans exploded. A fist-sized fireball was born and rushed into the balls of poisonous water. However, Something happened that surprised Xiaohua. His fireball talismans, which had always been invincible, actually lost their sound the moment they entered the balls of poisonous water. All of the fireballs were corroded by the poisonous water, rapidly annihilating and disappearing. Damn, as expected, you have some skill. Xiaohua was all smiles, not nervous in the slightest. He waved his two hands again, and several sparks flew towards the balls of water again. And at this time, the balls of water had already flown several feet away from Xiaohua. With a crisp cracking sound, the balls of water actually expanded, about to burst. However, at the instant the water ball exploded, numerous sparks landed on it. It was as though a flame had landed in oil. With a tongue sound, the poison water ball was ignited. Immediately, the entire poison water ball rapidly shrunk and finally disappeared. Forget it, when Shang-Chung saw this, he secretly sighed in his heart. He knew that his divine ability was restrained by Xiaohua. Those formless poisonous mist that could normally injure people would probably not be effective today. Go Shang-Chung was resolute. He urged his transcendence energy, and the scarlet blood hook suddenly shrunk, almost becoming 3 inches in size. It crashed towards Xiaohua's body. At this time, he didn't have any ideas. He only hoped that this magic artifact could touch Xiaohua, or at least make a cut on Xiaohua's body. Then, victory would be in his grasp. Ha ha ha, Xiaohua laughed loudly. You've exhausted your abilities. Just watch this young master's methods. While speaking, Xiaohua clapped his hands. What he took out was actually not the cloud-suppressing seal, but the yang leaf fan. Under the urging of Xiaohua's transcendence energy, a fire dragon was born on the yang leaf fan, whistling as it pounced towards the scarlet blood hook. Yang leaf fan? Shang-Ching's expression had never been so unsightly. To tell the truth, if it was the cloud-suppressing seal, he really had the strength to fight. In his heart, he wasn't too afraid. He was even thinking just now, Xiaohua's exquisite true samadhi fire. How could he not have a fire-type magic artifact? And he just happened to have a Buddhist seal? Only now did he understand that it wasn't that Xiaohua didn't have one, but that he had 2 magic artifacts. That fire-type yang leaf fan just didn't reveal itself. Swift, Shang-Ching's ferocious energy was suddenly born. He suddenly released his pressure, directly pressing it toward Xiaohua. He vainly attempted to rely on the pressure of a middle foundation establishment stage to suppress Xiaohua. Moreover, at the same time, a layer of bloody red silk appeared on the scarlet blood hook, like a branching branch bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws, extending towards the air. Xiaohua's expression didn't change in the slightest. He clapped his hand on his forehead, releasing the same pressure. Even though it was a bit weaker than Shang-Ching's pressure, Xiaohua's figure wasn't immobile like a qi condensation stage cultivator. And, as expected, it's still the early foundation establishment stage. Sensing Xiaohua's pressure, Shang-Ching's heart couldn't help but feel a burst of calmness. However, just as he was about to urge his pressure again, there was an explosive bang. The flames of the yang leaf fan completely wrapped around his scarlet blood hook. The tongue of flame licked the scarlet blood hook, and, in the blink of an eye, the blood that had just been produced was completely burned away. Damn it, a magic artifact. It really is a magic artifact. Shang-Ching almost groaned inwardly. Fight! Shang-Ching roared in his heart. He clapped his hand and took out a jade bottle from his storage pouch. He raised his head and poured it into his mouth. Then, he clapped his hand again and took out a blood-red, glittering talisman. He slapped it on his body, and with a buzzing sound, Shang-Ching's body gradually expanded. Moreover, the skin of his whole body became scarlet. Watch this father's method. Shang-Ching grinned maliciously and flew towards Xiaohua from the air. When he got closer, his unshaven black face became even more ferocious. He clapped his hand and took out a fist-sized pitch-black hammer. He waved it and smashed it toward Xiaohua. Demonic artifact? Xiaohua stood with his hands behind his back, appearing very relaxed. Seeing the familiar appearance in Shang-Ching's hand, he couldn't help but sweep it with his divine sense. He almost laughed inwardly. but the pitch-black demonic artifact in his eyes seemed somewhat gloomy. He feared that Shang Tsung had done something to this demonic artifact. Hearing the demonic artifact in Shang Cheng's hand waving in the air, causing the wind to howl and make strange sounds, Chong Li Qiang and the others were all aghast. They all secretly exclaimed, "A Foundation establishment cultivator really has incomparable magical abilities. Not only does he have a talisman, he also has a legendary demonic artifact." Could it be that Xiao Hua's been scared silly? Seeing that Xiao Hua was unhurried and didn't seem to have any means to deal with it, Shang Tsung was slightly surprised. He didn't think that Xiao Hua had really been scared silly. For a moment, his waving hand actually became somewhat sluggish. Damn it, what's wrong with this father? Feeling the hesitation in his heart, Shang Tsung was greatly alarmed. He hurriedly urged his strength to activate the strange talisman. The demonic artifact in his hand carried the sound of wind and smashed towards Xiao Hua's head. It's only SOSO. Xiao Hua calmly waved his hand and took out a demonic hammer that was several times larger than the one in Shang Cheng's hand. With a loud bang, the two hammers collided. The sound was so loud that the ears of the mortals near Cold River House were ringing. Most of them swayed and fell to the ground. Shang Cheng's mouth was wide open in astonishment. His entire body was sent flying by the demonic hammer. "Don't leave." Xiao Hua's figure moved, following Shang Tsung like a shadow. He waved his hand again. Bang, bang, bang. 3 consecutive bangs rang out. The demonic hammer, which was still somewhat difficult to wave during qi refinement, was now like a piece of grass in Xiao Hua's hand. Shang Cheng's arm was already sore and numb, and his entire body was temporarily unable to move. Under Xiao Hua's rapid attacks, he actually didn't have any reaction. The 3 hammers all hit his body, but Shang Cheng's body emitted a faint blood-red color, forcibly blocking the demonic hammer's enormous power. A protective magic treasure? Xiao Hua's eyes slightly narrowed. You think you're the only one with a magic treasure? Shang Tsung laughed evilly. His hands rubbed together, and a faint black brilliance formed between his palms again. Forget it. This young master is too lazy to play with you. Xiao Hua opened his mouth, and a drop of spirit fire flew out, directly flying towards Shang Cheng's body. It's only the true samadhi fire. This old man wants to see whether or not it can break this old man's magic treasure. Shang Cheng's heart was apprehensive, but also somewhat panicked. He really didn't know whether his magic treasure could withstand the true samadhi fire. The magic seal from before hesitated for a moment, then changed again. Several scarlet streaks landed on his body. Go, Xiao Hua urged the divine fire art, and half of the magic power in his body immediately poured into the spirit fire. Following a wave of Xiao Hua's finger, a long, rocket-like streak rushed into Shang Cheng's chest. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for it. Chapter 1923. Without the slightest suspense, the flame went in. Shang Tsung screamed miserably, and his hands finally formed a seal. With a muffled pong sound, Shang Cheng's corpse suddenly exploded. Countless tiny pieces of flesh flashed with scarlet brilliance and rushed in all directions. Damn it! Xiao Hua's divine sense swept and knew that these pieces of flesh were highly toxic. If they fell into the river or encountered ordinary people, it would be a great disaster. Moreover, what made Xiao Hua the most angry was that Shang Tsung actually wrapped his storage bag in the flesh. If Xiao Hua wanted to take the storage bag, he must be poisoned. Therefore, he did not hesitate to form another hand seal. The other half of the magic power in his body surged into it. The drop of spirit fire turned into a fire net and quickly wrapped all the flesh and blood. With a slight curl, it turned into nothingness. At the same time, the spiritual fire also burned the storage bag slightly. Xiao Hua's mind wrapped around the gap of the storage bag, and regardless of the consequences, everything inside was sucked into his own space. Damn it! Don't you know that this young master doesn't need to use his hands to take things? Xiao Hua looked at the storage bag being burned to ashes and sneered. Immediately, Xiao Hua swept his divine sense around for a moment, and then said, "Good." He breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, in the Buddha's heart of Xiao Hua's Buddha's Saraira, the burning Buddha's fire added a few more colors out of thin air. This Buddha fire had already reached a certain scale when Xiao Hua was in the foundation establishment stage and used the 5 skanda spiritual awakening formation to transcend the undead. Now, it was burning more and more vigorously. After killing Shang Chung, Xiao Hua did not rush to land. Instead, he quietly stood in midair. While recovering his magic power, he furrowed his brows and pondered. To be honest, Xiao Hua did not expect Shang Chung to be so difficult to kill. Shang Chung actually made him use the spiritual fire twice and exhausted all the magic power in his body. For Shang Chung, who was only in the middle stage of foundation establishment, this was making a big fuss over nothing. However, Xiao Hua didn't want to reveal it too much in front of everyone. This spiritual fire was only because he had the true Samadhi fire as a cover. If others saw it, they would treat it as an ordinary flame. Otherwise, Xiao Hua wouldn't reveal his trump card. In fact, the most important thing was that although Xiao Hua now had the spiritual power of the peak foundation establishment stage, and even the early gold core stage, he didn't have the corresponding techniques and magical powers to control this spiritual power. Another reason was that Shang Chung was from the 10,000 Poison sect. Although it was a small sect, its poison was very powerful and was feared by ordinary cultivators. If the shopkeeper of the Cold River House, Han Jiang, was able to lay down a restrictive spell on the Cold River House, how could he not have any defensive spells on his body? But even so, he was still harmed by Shang Cheng's poison. From this, one could see how powerful the poison of the 10,000 Poison sect was. If it wasn't for the fact that Xiao Hua didn't have the true Samadhi fire or the spiritual fire, he wouldn't be afraid of Shang Cheng's poison. However, if he wanted to kill Shang Chung, it wouldn't be easy for him to not be poisoned. Granny, I still have to look at the techniques of various sects. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua felt a burst of warmth in his heart. Although Xiao Hua didn't have the patience to carefully organize the 4 storage pouches that Xiang Yang gave him, he still roughly looked through them. He originally thought that Xiang Yang would take away the cultivation technique jade slips of the 3 gold core stage seniors from Xuanyin School, Huanhua sect, and Huangdao sect, and bring them back to the Imperial Thunder sect to claim credit for himself. However, what surprised Xiao Hua was that Xiang Yang didn't take a single one of these things. Even if there were a dozen or so jade slips, he didn't know which sect they belonged to. Presumably, they were the techniques of the cultivators from the side sects killed by the Thunder Beast. Xiao Hua understood very well that when these things were put together, they were comparable to the foundation of a small cultivation sect. Xiao Hua himself could even use these cultivation techniques to form a small family or sect. However, Xiang Yang didn't have the slightest intention of keeping them for himself and left them all to Xiao Hua. What he took away was only half of the Thunder Beast's inner core and some other things that Xiang Yang knew were useless to Xiao Hua. Eldest senior brother treated me like this. I will definitely repay eldest senior brother. Chui Hongshen, consider yourself lucky. Xiao Hua thought of Xiang Yang and naturally thought of Chui Hongshen. Xiao Hua, Shue's somewhat anxious voice sounded. Xiao Hua looked up and saw that Shui couldn't wait for him and flew into the air. You all right? Immortal Beauty School's Mei Xiao Yao already ran away. I'm fine. How could I be fine? Xiao Hua waved his hand in an extremely relaxed manner and said, Your husband is thinking. As for Mei Xiao Yao, if she ran away, then she ran away. I originally didn't intend to kill her. Shui was surprised. You already killed her. What are you still thinking about? Sigh. Killing her is too tiring. Your husband wants to think about how to easily kill her. Xiao Hua winked exaggeratedly. Shui covered her mouth and laughed. She's a middle-stage foundation building cultivator. It's already not bad that you were able to kill her, and you still want to easily kill her. I'll wait for you. Xiao Hua smiled and flew down the Cold River House hand in hand. At this moment, Other than the Chong family siblings, there was also a gorgeous, beautiful woman and a 10-year-old child in the Cold River house. The two of them were kneeling beside Han Zhang's body that had already turned into a pitch-black mass of blood with sorrowful expressions. Seeing Xiao Hua land, the Chong family siblings were both afraid and longing. They bowed and saluted him. "Senior Xiao, you've worked hard." "Thank you, Master Xiao." The beautiful woman knelt on the ground, rushed forward a few steps, and kowtowed as she shouted. The 10-year-old child was even more sensible. He also followed his mother and kowtowed. "Thank you, Benefactor Xiao." "Sai, get up." Xiao Hua looked at the pitiful mother and son and felt extremely uncomfortable in his heart. If it wasn't for Shang Cheng's evil deeds, this would be such a harmonious family. With just a wave of Shang Cheng's hand, two more sorrowful people appeared in this world. The trajectory of these two people's lives had already changed. When a mother and son saw that they couldn't continue kowtowing, they also didn't dare to force themselves to kowtow. However, they still knelt and didn't move, sobbing miserably. That's right, the Cold River house was precisely at the bank of this cold river. Who knows how many people coveted it? Han Jiang had died, and not even his bones remained. What would this orphan and widow do? This lowly concubine Han Zhang's first wife, Lady Lu. This is Han Zhang's only son, Han. After sobbing for a while, Lady Lu raised her head and said to Xiao Hua, "Han Jiang has been killed. To be able to receive Master Zhao's righteousness and kill the murderer, this lowly concubine really has nothing to repay. Han Jiang only left this Cold River house behind. This lowly concubine is willing to give this Cold River house to Master Xiao as a gift of thanks. I only ask that." At this point, Lady Lu didn't dare to say anything else. She looked at Xiao Hua with difficulty, then looked at her own son whose eyes were flashing with anger, unyielding, and reverence. She clenched her teeth and said, "I only ask that Master Xiao can extend one more little finger and save Hani from the fire and water." Madame Lu didn't talk about herself, and only talked about Hani. This immediately hit Xiao Hua's weak spot. He naturally knew what Madame Lu was thinking. He inwardly sighed and said, "Han Yi, come over here." Chapter 1924. Yes, although Han Yi was in his teens, he was well versed in the matters of the marketplace. He very cleverly knelt and walked a few steps, arriving in front of Xiao Hua. Suddenly, Xiao Hua felt an indescribable discomfort in his heart, but it couldn't be said to be disgust. He originally wanted to see Han Yi's aptitude or constitution to see if he could find a disciple for Xiangyang. But seeing Han Yi so cleverly, he was afraid it didn't conform to eldest senior brother's honest nature. Right? You actually already started cultivating? Xiao Hua probed Han Yi's meridians with a trace of magic power and immediately asked in astonishment, "I'll let you know, Daoist Xiao." Han Yi's eyes were somewhat arrogant. He smiled apologetically and said, "My father secretly nurtured me when I was young. It's just that there was no sect on the path of immortality, so no sect accepted me as a disciple." Then where did your first layer of qi refining cultivation come from? Xiao Hua understood that it was impossible for Han Jiang to run such a large Cold River house without a bit of reliance or planning. "Han," he said again, "it was casually taught by an immortal who passed by the restaurant on a daily basis. Your cultivation method, where did it come from?" Xiao Hua asked again. "I also don't know. My father gave it to me." As Han Yi spoke, he carefully took out an oilcloth bag from his bosom and handed it to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua opened it to take a look. In an instant, he felt a burst of sadness. Indeed, inside the oilcloth bag were a dozen yellowed pages of paper. On them were scribbled words of various sizes. It was a simple earth-type qi refining cultivation method. He didn't know how Han Jiang obtained it, but clearly, Han Jiang's painstaking care for the child was seen by Xiao Hua. At the same time, he also thought of his own difficulties in finding a cultivation method. Sigh. Xiao Hua sighed. With a wave of his hand, a flame flashed, and the pages containing the cultivation method turned into ashes. Han Yi was startled and cried out in a low voice. But immediately, he understood and lowered his head. Lu Shi was greatly alarmed and cried out, Dao Xiao, Lu de Seo, don't worry. Shui hurriedly reminded in a low voice, this cultivation method doesn't necessarily come from somewhere. If others know about it, it will bring misfortune to the child. Yes, yes, this lowly concubine understands. Madame Lu immediately understood and hurriedly nodded. But then, she remembered that Shui had actually called her sister-in-law, and a look of gratitude appeared in her eyes. It had to be said that Shui had changed a lot after following Xiaohua. If it were before, she would definitely not be able to call her sister-in-law. However, for her lover, she had changed. She had changed, even her personality. This Xiao originally intended to recommend you to the Imperial Lightning Sect to become a disciple. Unfortunately, your physique is of the Earth attribute, and you don't meet the requirements of my Imperial Lightning Sect. This has made things difficult for this Xiao. Xiaohua pondered for a moment before speaking. However, his gaze once again swept over the Chong siblings. Seeing Xiaohua burn Han Yi's cultivation method, Chong Lihao's heart trembled. He understood that Xiaohua was preparing to give Han Yi a new cultivation method, a cultivation method of the Earth attribute. Even Chong Lihao himself was envious of it. Now that Xiaohua's gaze swept over him, he immediately understood what was going on. He took a step forward and bowed. Senior Xiao, the Imperial Lightning Sect is really too far away. It will be difficult for Han, Yi, and Madame Lu to go there. Since we encountered this matter together with Senior Xiao, and Senior Xiao helped Han, Yi to settle the blood debt, then we will help Senior Xiao deal with the aftermath? Great! Xiaohua saw that Chong Lihao was so tactful and was also happy. He smiled and said, then how about letting Han Yi become a disciple of your Chong clan? Sister-in-law Lu can also go with Han Yi. As for the future, it will be up to you. This junior has the same intention. Chong Lihao smiled apologetically and said, although the Chong clan of Mo Cloud Village isn't big, it shouldn't be a problem to take care of a widow and an orphan. Remember, don't let them be bullied. Xiaohua reminded him. Then he smiled and said, of course, since they are disciples of the Chong clan, they should be disciplined. Yes, this junior understands. Chong Lihao smiled and turned to Chong Limin and said, little Min, go around and see if there is anyone who wants to take over this Cold River house. As a cultivator, I can't be tied down by these things. Yes, Chong Limin nodded and walked away quickly. Xiaohua looked at Han Zhang's bloodstains on the ground. With a wave of his hand, another flame appeared, burning everything into nothingness. He turned his head and said to Madame Lu, don't blame me for being ruthless. This bloodstain is highly toxic. Leaving it here will only harm you. Yes, I will follow Spiritual Master Zhao's decision. Lu Shi saw that her husband's last mark disappeared, and her heart was filled with sorrow. Sister-in-law Lu, you can leave now. Tell them to pack up the things that we are going to take away. Later, I will ask Xiao Min to send you to Mo Yun Village. Chong Lihao was quite good at commanding. He made a prompt decision and gave his orders. Yes, this lowly concubine will go now. Lu Shi understood this kind of danger. Naturally, she wanted to take advantage of the time when the other immortals were here to deal with everything. She immediately agreed and went downstairs after looking at Han Yi. Han Yi, get up. If there is no need, don't kneel in the future. Xiaohua looked at Lu Shi's back and said, yes, this disciple understands. Han Yi immediately got up and stood beside Xiaohua obediently. Xiaohua thought for a while, then clapped his hands and took out 2 jade slips, one in each hand. He closed his eyes and immersed his divine sense in them. After a while, he put one of them away and gave the other one to Chong Lihao. This is a cultivation method of the earth element. It can help you reach the early stage of the foundation building realm. Take it as a reward for Han Yi. Chong Lihao nodded. Chong Lihao's heart was beating wildly. He quickly waved his hand and said, Senior Xiao, to help the late shopkeeper Han is our goodwill. What you're doing. However, Chong Lihao's fervent eyes exposed his thoughts again. Haha, I will leave now. However, your Chong family will have to teach Han Yi in the future. If there is no reward, I'm afraid you won't be able to explain it to the sect. Xiao Hua said with a faint smile. Well, since Senior Xiao said so, I won't be unreasonable. Chong Li Hao was generous. He reached out and took the jade slips and kept them properly. Xiao Hua clapped his hands again and took out a small storage bag. He passed it over and said, there are some spiritual stones and elixirs for chi refinement. Take it as a gift for the Chong family's sect master. If there are any leftovers, give them a Han Yi. Yes, yes. Chong Li Hao was shocked. He wanted to decline, but when he looked at Xiao Hua, he couldn't bring himself to say those words. He had no choice but to accept it. Then he took out the jade slip of the cultivation method and put it in the storage bag. He said seriously, Senior Xiao is so righteous, which is rare in the Dawn Rain continent. I will definitely tell Sect Master what you said. Please rest assured, Senior Xiao. Ha, good. Xiao Hua nodded. He looked at the Han River Pavilion. Everything was still the same, except for Han Zhang's life. Xiao Hua sighed and walked to the side of the pavilion. At this time, the round sun was gradually setting in the west. The blood-red sunlight shone on the surface of the Han River. It was like a bloody snake wantonly dancing. It was very bleak. Seeing that Xiao Hua was in a bad mood, Xue didn't dare to go forward. When she was about to take a step forward, she heard Chong Shumei whispered timidly, Sister Xue, you are Ling Feiyun's sister from the Mist Mountain? Yes. Xue heard and asked curiously, do you know Feiyun? Yes. Chong Shumei's face actually blushed as she said in a low voice, 3 years ago, when this little sister went out to train, I passed by the Misty Mountain and saw Feiyun. Xue rolled her eyes and understood. She smiled and said, what did Feiyun say to you? He didn't say anything. Chong Shumei was a bit embarrassed. I was in a hurry and met Feiyun. We traveled together for a few days. He told me about Sister Xue. I just heard Sister Xue's name and that you were a disciple of the Lightning School. That's why I asked. So, fellow Chong is not an outsider. Xue's gaze had scanned Chong Shumei dozens of times, from inside to outside, from top to bottom. Although Chong Shumei's skin was a little dark and her eyebrows were a little big, the more one looked at her, the more attractive she was. She was far more refreshing than Mei Xiaoyao from the Immortal Beauty sect. Sister, your cultivation is one level lower than Feiyun. You have to work harder, Xue said with a smile. He is already at the 10th level of Qi refining? Chong Shumei was pleasantly surprised. 3 years ago, he was still at the 9th level of Qi refining. Yes, Xue said again. Feiyun's true bloodline has already awakened. His cultivation will be faster in the future. I'm afraid he is not far away from foundation building. Well, then I really have to congratulate him. Chong Shumei gritted her teeth. She was both happy and panicked. While they were talking, Chong Limin brought a fat man who looked quite rich and respectfully said, Senior Xiao, this is, no need to tell me. Everything will be decided by your Chong family. Xiao Hua said without turning his head. Yes. Chong Limin turned his head and told the situation to Chong Li Hao. Chong Li Hao asked Han Yi while dealing with the matter very quickly. Then he brought Han Yi and the fat man downstairs and handed over the Cold River house. Sister, you and Senior Xiao, where are you going? Chong Shumei saw that there was no one upstairs and whispered, I came out to experience foundation building. I don't have a fixed place to go. Xue said with a smile. Oh, Chong Shumei's face showed envy. I don't know if I can see the hope of foundation building like you. There will be. Since Feiyun has it, you might as well. Xue was quite fond of Chong Shumei. After a moment of silence, Chong Shumei looked at Xiao Hua, then looked at Chong Yulian and whispered, I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it. Chapter 1925. What is it? Just say it. Xue said straightforwardly. When Chong Shumei heard this, her courage was boosted. She smiled apologetically and said, the 5 of us originally wanted to go to Tianmen Mountain's Huang family, but brother Hao should have to turn back. The 4 of us went to the Huang family, but we didn't get anything. If we all turn back, this trip will be a waste. I wonder if sister is interested in going to the Huang family? Why go to the Huang family? Shui Shui asked curiously. Sister, you don't know. Chang Yulian also came over and whispered, Tianmen Mountain's Huang family is that little cabbage cultivation family. Now that their family has declined, they can only retreat to a corner of Tianmen Mountain. Now, their family has encountered a strange situation. A female member of the family, who is just like a little cabbage, contracted a strange disease and is bedridden. Although she doesn't look strange, she just can't wake up. Sometimes, she will have a strange smile on her face. The head of the Huang family is very anxious. They found many famous doctors, but they couldn't treat her. They felt that it might be related to cultivation, but now that they have declined, they can't even compare to my MO, Cloud Village. They can't find a cultivator with profound cultivation, so they use their Huang family's ancestral magic tool as the price to ask a nearby cultivator to treat her. Hee, did you take a fancy to that magic tool? Shui Shui chuckled. Yes, sister, you know it's true. Chang Xiumei smiled and said, my MO Cloud Village can't compare to Misty Mountain. Sister and the others can't compare to Feiyun. We don't have that many magic tools for us to use. Sister and brothers want to try our luck and see if we can get that magic tool back. Sister went with Senior Xiao. Although I don't have the confidence to treat her, at least Sister and the others won't be in danger, right? If Sister doesn't have anything urgent, why not go and take a look? Chang Xiumei begged. That's right, Sister. Maybe the Huang family has other stories about Little Cabbage. Chang Yulian also said, this little sister also wants to see what that little cabbage is called and where she grew up. This little sister really admires such an infatuated girl that is hard to come by in this world. Shui Shui may not have listened to Chang Xiumei's words, but Chang Yulian's words aroused Shui's curiosity. Yes, a cultivator actually fell in love with a weak scholar and finally committed suicide for the scholar. This was simply impossible, but it had been passed down by the bank of the cold river for thousands of years. What was the secret behind it? Shui Shui turned around and was just about to ask Xiao Hua for his opinion when she heard Xiao Hua say with a smile, wherever junior sister goes, senior brother will follow. This was exactly what Shui Shui had told Xiao Hua that day. All right. Shui Shui looked at Chang Xiumei and smiled. Then sister will accompany you. Okay. Chang Yulian and Chang Xiumei laughed and almost jumped up, completely looking like young girls. Chang Liqiang, who had been standing at the side without moving, also had a smile on his face. Mortal affairs were also complicated. Chang Lihao helped Han hand over the Han River house and actually went for the time of meal. Fortunately, Xiao Hua looked at the setting sun and didn't feel anxious in his heart. Senior Xiao, this junior has settled the matter. Chang Lihao went up to the fourth floor and bowed. This junior originally planned to take Han, and Lucier back to Moyun village, but since it was Senior Zhao's request, this junior will go back with Xiao Min and very good. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and took out a large stack of flying talismans and handed it to Chang Lihao, saying, this Xiao will go with your sister to the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain. You all go quickly. Chang Lihao was stunned at first. Then he was overjoyed and said with a smile, if Senior Xiao goes, it will be a piece of cake. Xiao Hua chuckled. The Huang family of Tianmen Mountain is a cultivation family. This Xiao is only an early-stage foundation establishment realm cultivator. This Xiao is simply not worthy of their attention. This Xiao is just accompanying junior sister to take a look. As long as Senior Xiao can go. Chang Lihao held the storage bag given by Xiao Hua in his hand. All of Han, and Lucier's things were thrown inside. Thank you, spiritual master Xiao. Lucier and Han, thanked again. We will never forget spiritual master Zhao's kindness. And go. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said to Han, cultivate well. If you can succeed in your cultivation, you must also remember today's matter. Do more good deeds that conform to the Tao of heaven, and do more righteous deeds that are beneficial to people. This junior understands. Han bowed and said, seeing Han Yi's excited appearance, Xiao Hua shook his head in his heart. Understand my ass. If it was so easy to understand, How could there be so many people in the world who pursued benefits? Even if he understood now, when there is temptation tomorrow, he would have already thrown the word righteous to the back of his mind. Soon after, Chang Li Hao and Chang Li Min took Han Yi and Lu Shi back to Emoyun village. Xiao Hua took Xue Xue and Chang Xiumei and flew towards Tianmen Mountain. After traveling from Hanjiangnan for more than 10 days, they arrived at the area of Tianmen Mountain. The scenery around Tianmen Mountain was different from what Xiao Hua had seen before. There were ravines everywhere, countless streams, and all the lands were connected by rivers. Most of the people in the secular world traveled on boats. Among the rippling water, there was a lot of rain. For more than 10 days, there was a lot of rain. It was like a misty rain. Fortunately, Xiao Hua and the others were all cultivators and were not afraid of this rain. This was especially true for Xiao Hua. For the past 10 days, other than flying slowly, he had been chatting with Xue Xue and the Chang sisters. The rest of the time, he had been squinting his eyes and carefully comprehending some golden core cultivators' spells and sword formations. At night, he had put all of his thoughts into comprehending them. Therefore, after 10 days, his body was surrounded by an extremely dim brilliance. Although this brilliance was very weak, it was enough to block out the rain. Senior Martial Brother Xiao, Tianmen Mountain is not far ahead. Chang Xiumei pointed at the distant mountains and said with a smile. In these 10 days, Chang Xiumei and the others had spent a lot of time with Xiao Hua and gradually understood that this senior Xiao was extremely amiable. He was far from the eccentric temperament they had imagined. Most of the time, he was even easier to talk to than Xue Xue. Therefore, all their fear gradually disappeared. Looking at Xiao Hua's face that was even younger than them, they changed the way they addressed him from Senior Xiao to Senior Martial Brother Xiao. Xiao Hua did not think much of it. His temperament was simple, and he also liked to be with young people. It did not matter whether they called him senior or not. And we actually flew so far. Xiao Hua rubbed his chin and said, "That little cabbage had no reason to meet a weak scholar at night and run for more than 10 days, right?" Gidge, Chang Yulian said with a smile, "I'm afraid that little cabbage from 10,000 years ago didn't live on Tianmen Mountain." At that time, the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain was very powerful. It should be on the banks of the cold river. And it should be. Xiao Hua nodded and turned his head to look. "Your brother, Hao should be back soon, right?" Chang Yulian also nodded and said, "We flew very slowly and were waiting for them. If we had followed our usual pace, they should have arrived today." Chapter 1926. Then, she flew in front of Xue Xue and hugged Xue Xue's arm. She smiled. "Actually, Sister Xue and Senior Brother Xiao should go to Imo Cloud Village. The scenery there is much better than here. At least there isn't so much rain and fog." "Is there something wrong?" Chang Xiumei asked anxiously. "No." Xue Xue was about to comfort her when Xiao Hua said, "They are back." Senior Brother Xiao saw them with his spiritual sense? Chang Xiumei asked enviously. "Yes," Xiao Hua nodded. Sure enough, after 15 minutes, they heard Chang Li Hao's surprised voice, "Senior Xiao, we really caught up with you." But seeing the shock on Chang Xiumei's face, Chang Li Hao was stunned. "Sister Xiumei? What's wrong?" "No, nothing." Chang Xiumei reacted and shook her head. She knew Chang Li Hao and Chang Li Min's flying speed very well. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, they had already flown more than 10 miles. In that case, Xiao Hua's spiritual sense had already exceeded 10 miles. This was definitely not the spiritual sense range of an ordinary cultivator in the early stage of foundation establishment. Although Chang Xiumei admired Xiao Hua for killing Shang Cheng, she also heard Shang Cheng's words and thought that Xiao Hua only did it with the power of a magic treasure. Also, Xiao Hua seemed to have used a lot of effort to kill Shang Cheng, so she didn't think highly of Xiao Hua. But now there was a clue that made Xiao Hua look up to him. "Greetings, Senior Xiao." Chang Li Hao and Chang Li Min flew to Xiao Hua and bowed. "And how did it go?" Seeing how excited Chang Li Hao and Chang Li Min were, Xiao Hua naturally knew that their trip was successful. "Senior, The master of Mo Cloud Village heard about Senior Zhao's deeds and was moved. A cultivator like Senior Zhao, who can help the weak and get rid of the strong, is rare in the Dawn Rain continent now. The master admires Senior Zhao a lot and wants to see Senior Zhao face to face. Chong Li Hao said as he clapped his hand and took out a red token. He handed it to Xiao Hua and said, "Unfortunately, the family head can't easily leave Mo Cloud Village. This is the token of a guest elder of Mo Cloud Village. Senior Zhao, please accept it. When you have the chance in the future, come to Mo Cloud Village for a chat. Get rid of the strong and help the weak." Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Wasn't this phrase used too much in the pugilistic world? Moreover, Chong Li Hao didn't mention Han Yi, but directly talked about the family head's words. Naturally, he was instructed by the family head of the Chong family. At this time, he even took out the guest token, which was quite unexpected for Xiao Hua. Sigh. No wonder so many cultivators are unwilling to meddle in other people's business. It turns out that the consequences of meddling in other people's business are so complicated. Xiao Hua almost wanted to scratch his head. However, when he looked at Chang Shumei, who was standing next to Xue Xue, he felt that this female cultivator seemed to have some sort of relationship with Ling Feiyan. Moreover, he and Xue Xue would definitely have to dual cultivate in the future. It could be said that there was some karma between them. Forget it. Xiao Hua sighed inside. He extended his hand and said, "Since your patriarch thinks so highly of me, this Xiao will go to Mo Cloud Village to take a look when I have time." Great. Chong Li Hao was absolutely overjoyed. This was the highest mission given to him by the head of the family, and it was completed so easily. After Xiao Hua took the hope, Chong Li Hao said again, "As for Junior Han, Yi, and Lu clan, Senior Xiao doesn't need to worry." Before this junior left, the family head had already appointed a foundation establishment grandpa to guide Han Yi's cultivation. That's right, Xiao Hua secretly curled his lips. That set of martial arts can directly cultivate to the early stage of foundation establishment. If Mo Cloud Village doesn't pay attention to it, then this junior will be blind. That's right, Xiao Hua nodded and said, "You guys have worked hard too." It's not hard. Chong Limin at the side smiled and said, "Senior Zhao's flying talisman is really useful. This junior didn't use much spiritual power." Xiao Hua secretly laughed. This was clearly flattery. If it was a fireball talisman, then it was made by himself. This flying talisman was bought by him casually. It wasn't a high-level item, so it was nothing. But after Xiao Hua finished laughing, his heart was moved. He clapped his hands and took out hundreds of fireball talismans. He handed them to Chong Limin and said, "You guys have worked hard. This fireball talisman was made by me personally. Take it to protect yourself." Thank you, senior brother Xiao. Without waiting for Chong Limin to take it, Chong Yulian smiled and said, "First, senior brother Zhao's fire attribute magic is so powerful, and you have one of the thunder and fire attributes of the thunder-controlling sect. This fireball talisman must be very powerful." Chong Limin was still a little disappointed, but after hearing Chong Yulian's words, he immediately understood, and his face showed even more disappointment. "Yulian, how can you neglect Senior Xiao like this?" Chong Li Hao heard, and his face became slightly gloomy as he scolded. Brother Hao." Chong Yulian chuckled as if she was gossiping with her brother in Mo Yun village. "I heard from big sister Xue that senior martial brother Xiao is not much older than us. He is much younger than our foundation establishment grandfathers in Mo Yun village. If we call him senior martial brother Xiao, wouldn't he be called old by a senior martial brother Xiao? Sister Xue won't be happy." This. Not only was Chong Li Hao speechless, but Xiao Hua also smiled bitterly. He could only wave his hand and said, "Just call him senior brother. It's convenient to go to Tianmin Mountain." "Yes, senior Xiao. Senior brother Xiao." When Chong Li Hao agreed, he was ecstatic. Xiao Hua had stepped into the foundation establishment realm at such a young age, and his strength was comparable to the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm. Such a person, not to mention the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect, even the disciples of small sects were worth making friends with. Moreover, Xiao Hua's temperament was simple and approachable. In the future, not to mention other things, just by casually giving some pointers, they would enjoy a lifetime of enjoyment. How could calling him senior brother be compared to calling him senior brother? Don't snatch it. Xiao Hua saw Chang Yulian put all the fireball talismans into the storage bag. Her playful look was somewhat similar to Xiao Xianrui's when she held the peacock fantasy in her hands in the early years. He said with a smile, "This thing is made by me. You can have as many as you want." As he spoke, he took out the remaining dozens of talismans and handed them to Chang Li Hao. "Thank you, senior brother Xiao." Chang Li Hao was overjoyed. "Darling Xiao, you know how to make yellow talismans?" Shui didn't know that Xiao Hua had this skill and asked with a smile. Xiao Hua held his chin with his hand and said mysteriously, "This senior brother has many secret skills. Where did you learn them? You can slowly understand them in the future." Xiao Hua's words were very ambiguous. How could Shui not hear it? It was the two's whispers. Now that Xiao Hua suddenly said it, while Shui's face was slightly hot, her heart was sweet. Chang Yulian and the others didn't know. They immediately asked excitedly, Senior brother Xiao, did you learn how to make yellow talismans in the Imperial Thunder Sect? Your Imperial Thunder Sect is really good. They teach everything." Cough, cough. Shui charmingly swept a glance at Xiao Hua. "Your senior brother Xiao is a genius. He didn't even go to learn the Imperial Thunder School's talisman crafting techniques. I'm afraid he already knew this when he was a loose cultivator back then, right? Io, senior brother Xiao was a rogue cultivator? Tell me." Chang Yulian's eyes immediately showed curiosity. Even if Chang Xiumei wanted to maintain a certain image in front of Shui, she couldn't help but look at Xiao Hua curiously. "Cough, cough, it's all the bitterness of the past," Xiao Hua said with a smile. However, this method of making fireball talismans and confinement talismans is really a method that rogue cultivators relied on to survive. If you are interested, this Xiao can teach you. Really? Chang Yulian jumped in the air. She was very happy. Other cultivators treasured their own techniques and hid all kinds of techniques. This Xiao Hua was good. After saying a few words, he wanted to teach them. This was a talisman-making technique. Mo Cloud Village spent who knows how many spirit stones to buy yellow talismans every year. Hee, Xiao Huaxian laughed. He had been a loose cultivator before, so he knew that it wasn't easy to obtain cultivation techniques. However, since he wouldn't be able to use yellow talismans in the future, and these siblings of the Chang family also seemed to be kind, what was wrong with teaching them a little? Of course, what Xiao Hua wanted to teach was their own understanding. He wouldn't teach what the Jinhua Mountain Fu family learned. Xiao Hua took out the small booklet of fireball talismans and icicle talismans and handed it to Shui. Shui understood. She first flipped through it and then handed it to Chang Xiumei. She said with a smile, "This talisman-making technique will trouble little sister Xiumei to write it down. I will learn it with my junior brothers and sisters. If there is anything I don't understand, I will ask senior martial brother Xiao." Chang Xiumei's hands were trembling. Two yellow talisman-making techniques at once. After she took it, her heart calmed down. She said firmly, "Little sister will be careful. Let's go. Tianmin Mountain isn't far. Let's go to the Huang family first." Xiao Hua ordered and flew away first. Yes, Chang Li Hao and the others answered and followed behind Xiao Hua in high spirits. Although Tianmin Mountain was already in sight, because the Chang siblings flew very slowly, Xiao Hua and the others still took half a day to reach it. They saw that Tianmin Mountain was on both sides of a big river. It was tall and straight, like an open door. On the side of Tianmin Mountain, several winding rivers surrounded the mountain ridge and finally flowed into the big river. In the middle of the several winding rivers, there were several connected mountains. On these mountains, flowers were splendid, trees were shady, and beautiful pavilions were hidden in the shade. It was like a paradise on earth. Moreover, at this time, it was sunny after the rain. The bright sunlight shone on it, and the raindrops were sparkling. Although there was no magic embellishment, how could the work of the heavens be made of rain? The green is strange, the embroidery is wrong, and the beauty of the bell covers the sky. But with such an outstanding place, the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain can't be underestimated. Seeing this, Xiaohua couldn't help but be moved. In such a place where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth condensed, it was too easy to produce a few talented disciples. Yes, only here like water can produce such an infatuated cabbage. Shueishue's thoughts were obviously different from Xiaohua's. Chapter 1927. Chang Lihao looked behind him and whispered, "What a pity. The Huang family of Tianmen Mountain is no longer the legendary Huang family." Yes, Xiaohua scanned the area with his divine sense. He knew that although there were many restrictions here, the flow of spiritual power in the restrictions was weak. There were many flaws that had not been fixed. It must have been abandoned for a long time. While they were talking, two people flew out from the center of the area and scanned the area with their divine senses. The two of them flew very fast and arrived in front of Xiaohua and the others in a moment. The first one was an old man who looked like he was in his 70s and wore yellow clothes. Behind him was another old man. The two of them stopped in the air, and their gazes fell on Xiaohua. The old man in front cupped his hands and said, "I am Huang Tianle, the head of the Huang family from Tianmen Mountain. May I know where you are from?" Xiaohua did not dare to be negligent. He cupped his hands and said, "I'm Xiaohua. Haha, I'm here to accompany the little brother from Moyun village to take a look." Moyun village's Chang family? Huang Tianle was stunned. When did the Chang family have a foundation establishment guest? Junior Chang Lihao greets Senior Huang. Chang Lihao saw Xiaohua pushing him forward and quickly bowed. "Well, nephew Chang, please get up." Huang Tianle helped Chang Lihao up and asked, "Nephew Chang, did you come here for a magic artifact?" "Yes, that's my intention," Chang Lihao answered awkwardly. "But from what I know, Moyun village doesn't seem to have any special medical skills, right?" Huang Tianle whispered. Chang Lihao smiled and said, "Of course, Moyun village doesn't have any. But senior brother Xiao is here, so we have the courage to come to Tianmen Mountain." "I see." Huang Tianle looked at Xiaohua and said with a wry smile, "I'll let fellow Taoist Xiao know that this old man's granddaughter has been ill for a long time. This old man had no choice but to do this, but many people came for no reason, but there were very few who could really help. This old man also had no choice but to do this." Hearing this, Chang Lihao's face became even redder. Didn't he come here to try his luck? Fortunately, he met Xiaohua this time. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to enter Tianmen Mountain. Xiaohua nodded. "I can understand fellow Taoist Huang's feelings, but since I've come here, I'll just take a look. If I wasn't confident, I wouldn't have dared to speak." "Well, I'm not talking about fellow Taoist Xiao. My Tianmen Mountain welcomes a cultivator like fellow Taoist Xiao." Huang Tianle squeezed out a smile on his face. "If it weren't for some family matters, we would definitely hold a banquet to welcome you. Under the heavenly Tao, there will always be changes." Fellow Taoist Huang's state of mind. "I'm afraid." Xiaohua shook his head slightly. Huang Tianle was shocked. Shock appeared on his face. He looked Xiaohua up and down, bowed, and said, "Many thanks for fellow Taoist Xiao's reminder. Fellow Taoist Xiao really is a guest elder of Mo Cloud Village." "Ha." Xiaohua took out Mo Cloud Village's token and said with a smile, "I'm Senior Marshal Brother Li Hao and the others. Fellow Taoist Huang doesn't need to doubt me." Looking at Mo Cloud Village's token in Xiaohua's hand, Huang Tianle was skeptical. However, since Xiaohua didn't say anything, Huang Tianle couldn't ask anymore. He could only smile apologetically and say, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, this is my Tianmen Mountain's housekeeper. He's also my younger brother, Huang Tianming. Let him accompany fellow Taoist Xiao and take a look around Tianmen Mountain first. Right now, there are too many noisy people in Vermilion Burr Palace Hall. Someone like fellow Taoist should go later." Well said. Xiaohua knew that there were definitely other foundation establishment cultivators in the Huang family. Huang Tianle couldn't possibly accompany him here. Instead of going to Vermilion Bird Palace Hall right now, he might as well take a look around here. Excuse me. Huang Tianla cupped his hands and flew away. The other old man came forward and smiled apologetically. I'm Huang Tianming. Greetings to fellow Taoist Xiao. I don't dare. Xiao Hua promptly returned the greeting. I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist Huang. Hee, fellow Taoist Xiao, coming to my Tianmen Mountain is already giving my Huang family face. Being able to bring fellow Taoist Xiao around Tianmen Mountain is also my honor. Please, Huang Tianming said with a smile, but there was clearly some worry in his eyes. How about this, fellow Taoist Huang? Since I'm here, why don't you bring me around Tianmen Mountain and let my junior brother and the others take a look? Tell them about the symptoms of your sex female cultivator. Although Xiao Hua wasn't sure if he could cure her, he could at least comfort her. Thus, he said this in embarrassment. All right, Huang Tianming sighed and said, I can see that fellow Taoist Xiao is considerate. You're not like other cultivators. As soon as you see the master of my sect, you don't ask about Xiang Er's illness, but first ask about the quality of the magic tool. Truly, cough cough. Xiao Hua was also a bit embarrassed. He felt like he was being forced to do something beyond his ability. How could Huang Tianming know what Xiao Hua was thinking? He explained the whole sequence of events to Xiao Hua in detail, hoping that Xiao Hua would have some way to reverse the situation. It turned out that for some unknown reason, the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain began to wither away since 10,000 years ago. Each generation was worse than the previous one. Originally, the master of the Huang family was a gold core cultivator, but it had declined until today. The master of the Huang family was only at the early stage of the foundation establishment realm, and his other aspects were even worse. The heirs of Tianmen Mountain were also mediocre, and the number of heirs from the branches had also decreased. In this generation, they finally managed to produce a female cultivator from the direct line with great difficulty. Her name was Huang Zixiang. This Huang Mengxiang had been intelligent since she was young. Although the Huang family had declined, their foundation was still there. Since they produced such a genius, they naturally nurtured her with all their might. That was why Huang Mengxiang was able to cultivate to the 9th layer of the aura refining realm before the age of 20. Moreover, based on her cultivation progress, she would probably be able to break through to the 10th layer of the aura refining realm within 3 years. However, last spring, when Huang Mengxiang was preparing to break through to the 10th layer of the aura refining realm, something went wrong. She unexpectedly fainted in the quiet room she was cultivating in. Huang Tianla checked her meridians and other places, but they were all normal and there were no abnormalities. Afterwards, Huang Tianla used the power of the entire Huang family, but he was unable to find a reason for her fainting. As a result, Huang Tianla had no choice but to issue a magic tool as a reward. Hearing this, Xiao Hua frowned and said, Fellow Taoist Huang, in fact, with the foundation of the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain, they could just casually find a gold core cultivator from a large sect like the Xuanyin school or the Qiqiao school. And even if it wasn't a large sect, wouldn't they be able to find a gold core cultivator from a cultivation sect like the Huangdao sect or the Five Elements sect? With their remarkable abilities, they might be able to cure her. It's better than issuing a reward like this. AI, Huang Tianming sighed and said with a bitter smile, This is the cycle of the heavenly Tao, karma. My Huang family of Tianmen Mountain was really too prominent tens of thousands of years ago. Although we couldn't compare to those large cultivation sects, we didn't put them in our eyes and offended many of them. Now that my Huang family has declined, how could they possibly put us in their eyes? As long as they don't hit us while we're down, that's good enough. Who would want to help us again? Moreover, if a gold core cultivator were to take action, the price isn't something my Huang family can bear. Now, the Huang family is different from before. We can only have. Now, only this Tianmen Mountain can provide for the reproduction of our descendants. We can't just hand it over to others. Chapter 1928. Oh, I understand. Xiao Huan naturally knew the pain of having no money and could only smile apologetically. But after thinking for a moment, he asked, since so many cultivators have come, do you have any clues? What clues? Huang Tanming said somewhat irritably. Every one of them has their own reasons, but none of them can wake Xiang-Er up. Moreover, Xiang-Er is still a virgin. How could she be casually played around with? There is no reason. AI. If that's the case, then I don't have any confidence. Xiao Hua said calmly. Looking at the situation, I don't need to go to the Huang family's Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. It's better to return early. Hee, as fellow Xiao said, you are a guest from afar. Although my Huang family has declined, we still welcome open and honest cultivators like fellow Xiao. Today is the last day of my Huang family welcoming guests. From tomorrow onwards, Xiang-Er's illness will be left to fate. We have worked hard for her for more than a year, so it could be considered that we have not let her down, Huang Tianming said with a smile. Moreover, our family head has also arranged a banquet tonight. Whether or not Xiang-Er is cured, we can't treat you poorly. Actually, to be honest, fellow Xiao doesn't make a difference. Why don't you go and join in the fun? Fine, I'll nag you once. Xiao Hua heard Huang Tianming's helpless tone and could only nod. Senior Huang, this junior has a question to ask. Shui was done admiring the scenery. After looking around for a long time, she finally opened her mouth to ask. Oh, this is my junior sister, Shui. Xiao Hua smiled and held Shui's hand. Seeing Xiao Hua and Shui being so intimate, how could Huang Tianming not know? He quickly smiled and said, what does fellow Shui want to ask? There is no harm in asking. Junior wants to ask. Shui hesitated for a moment and said, Little Cabbage, is she from Tianmen Mountain's Huang family? What is her name? Does she have? Without waiting for Shui to finish, Huang Tianming's expression suddenly changed, and he interrupted. This is just a rumor. How can you believe it? Fellow Taoist Shui, you actually came to our Heavenly Gate Mountain to ask about the origin of a river fish. This is really blasphemous to our Huang clan. Shui, hearing Huang Tianming's words, Xiao Huan knew that Shui was definitely not the first person to ask. Just as Huang Tianming said, if you take a river fish and ask if it was transformed from the Huang family's ancestor, isn't that blasphemy? It would be strange if Huang Tianming wasn't angry. Yes, senior brother. Shui knew that it was inappropriate and hurriedly bowed and said, this junior was curious and caused senior Huang to misunderstand. Huang Tianming flicked his sleeves, looked at the sky, and said, it's getting late. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please. His tone was no longer as affectionate and familiar as before. Xiao Hua forced a smile and raised his hand. Fellow Taoist Huang, please. Chang Yulian and Chang Xiumei, who were behind Shui, slightly pouted and gently stuck out their tongues. They rejoiced that it was Shui who asked. If it was them, they would have been expelled from the Heavenly Gate Mountain. At this time it was dusk. The sky around the Heavenly Gate Mountain was filled with the glow of the setting sun. In the gradually darkening sky, countless dark clouds were slowly forming. Within the dark clouds, faint blue lightning was gradually forming. The Vermilion Bird Palace Hall was built in the central region of the Heavenly Gate Mountain. It was a land surrounded by several streams. It was vermilion red and was very dazzling in the midst of the emerald green. It was like a ball of fire, and with a single glance, one could tell that the Huang clan of the Heavenly Gate Mountain had an extraordinary origin. Huang Tianming led Xiao Hua and the others until they were a few dozen feet away from the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Then, he descended and stopped outside the vermilion red walls. He called over a Huang family disciple who was guarding the entrance and said to Xiao Hua, Fellow Taoist Xiao, please, I still have other trivial matters to attend to. If I may be so bold, I can't accompany you. Xiao Hua forced a smile and could only cup his hands. Fellow Taoist Huang, please do your own things. I will bid farewell to your clan head and will leave in a while. And there is no need for that. The banquet will begin in a while. It is also good for fellow Taoist Xiao to get to know a few more fellow Taoists. Huang Tianming cupped his hands and politely turned around to leave. Senior Xiao, please. The Huang clan disciple respectfully bowed and said, "Un." Xiao Hua looked at Huang Tianming's back and knew that Xue Xue's words had offended him. But why is he so wary of little cabbage? No matter what, it was something that happened 10,000 years ago. Is there a need to be like this? Xiao Hua thought, and followed the disciple into the courtyard. The courtyard was 100 feet wide, and there was some strange rockery inside. There were also some rare tree species and a few spirit beasts. It was quite the style of a great clan. When Xiao Hua entered the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. The interior of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall was a sea of vermilion red. The ground was covered in dilapidated scarlet lava. The four walls of the palace hall were engraved with countless runes. There were also too many paintings. The paintings were either scenes of ancient times, scenes of cultivators fighting, or scenes of hundreds of beasts fighting. The runes on the walls were like tadpoles that converged towards the top of the palace hall. As Xiao Hua moved his gaze upwards, he saw that the tens of thousands of runes had actually converged into a picture of a vermilion bird. Oh my, Xiao Hua was inwardly astonished. The Huang clan of Heavenly Gate Mountain probably has the bloodline of the vermilion bird true spirit. This extravagance isn't inferior to an ordinary cultivation sect. But looking at this Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, it is just as Huang Tianming said. It should be coveted by other cultivation sections. I really can't accept their kindness so easily. Senior Xiao, this way please. Seeing Xiao Hua's footsteps slightly stagnate, the Huang clan disciple's heart also rose with pride. However, his face was still respectful as he raised his hand and indicated for Xiao Hua to sit inside the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. After Xiao Hua finished looking at the layout of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, he once again looked at the entire hall. He shockingly discovered that within the enormous Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, there were already dozens of white jade tables placed there. Around each table, there were a few cultivators sitting. These cultivators were either foundation establishment or qi refinement cultivators. However, qi refinement cultivators were still the majority. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please. In the depths of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, Huang Tianla sat at the head seat. Near him, there were a few early-stage foundation establishment cultivators accompanying him. When he saw Xiao Hua enter, he pointed to a place on his left that was slightly closer to him. Hearing Huang Tianla's greeting, all the cultivators in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall looked toward Xiao Hua. Dozens of divine senses also swept over. Their gazes were not without vigilance. The slightly noisy Vermilion Bird Palace Hall also became cold and silent. Xiao Hua looked at the place Huang Tianla pointed to. He didn't show off too much. He just cupped his hands and said, "Many thanks, Huang clan head. This little one's cultivation is insufficient. It's better for me to casually sit." This is Mo Cloud Stronghold's guest cultivator. His name is Xiao Hua. Huang Tianla smiled and introduced him to the early-stage foundation establishment cultivators next to him. He really is young and promising. When everyone heard this, they all withdrew their divine senses and said uninterestedly, Mo Cloud Stronghold actually also has a foundation establishment guest cultivator. It's not easy. Xiao Hua knew that these foundation-building cultivators were hostile towards him, and he wasn't interested in whatever magic tool they were looking for. He looked around and saw that there were a few empty spots at the end of the table where the foundation-building cultivators were seated. He then walked over to them. When everyone saw that Xiao Hua was very tactful, they became even more enraptured. Once again talking about the previous topic, the atmosphere in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall slowly became lively again. Huang Tianla also retracted his attention and dealt with the nearby cultivators. When Xiao Hua sat down, Xue Xue and the others also sat around Xiao Hua. Chang Li Hao and the others also sat very upright. They were the representatives of Mo Cloud Stronghold. They couldn't lose face for the people of Mo Cloud Stronghold. So its fellow Taoist Xiao, an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator sitting above Xiao Hua, cupped his hands and said, "I wonder when fellow Taoist Xiao became a guest cultivator of Mo Cloud Stronghold." Xiao Hua raised his head and looked at the stout-looking cultivator. He smiled and said, "What is fellow Taoist's name? Which sect do you belong to?" "Hee. I am a guest cultivator of Luanshi's Ma clan. My name is Moon Moat." The cultivator said with a bit of pride. "Luanshi's Ma clan?" Xiao Hua slightly frowned. He seemed to have some recollection. After thinking for a moment, he immediately understood. When he entered Imperial Thunder Sect, there seemed to be an aura refining disciple named Ma Miaoming, who seemed to be from some Luanshi's Ma clan. However, after so many years, Xiao Hua basically forgot. Seeing that Xiao Hua's face didn't have the respect he expected, Moon Moat unhappily asked, "So, could it be that the guest cultivator of Mo Cloud Stronghold has never heard of Luanshi's Ma clan?" Moon Moat? Xiao Hua smiled inwardly for no reason. This name was indeed similar to Moon Moat. However, looking at Moon Moat's serious appearance, he smiled apologetically and said, "Fellow Taoist, Moon Moat knows that this Xiao is ignorant and inexperienced. I was just invited as a guest cultivator by Mo Cloud Stronghold, and my head was filled with happiness. I'm still not too familiar with the situation in the country of Shi. I've made fellow Taoist Moon Moat laugh." The country of Shi? Moon Moat stared blankly. His face contained a faint sneer as he said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, could it be that you haven't been to the country of Lien and the country of Ming?" I'm really ashamed. It's exactly as fellow Taoist said. This time, this one brought the little junior brothers of Mo Cloud Stronghold to work, because I wanted to travel more. Xiao Hua's face was filled with fear, as if someone had seen through his thoughts. Seeing such a short-sighted fellow Taoist, Moon Moat's eyes unconsciously revealed pride. He pointed his finger and said, "Could it be? Fellow Taoist, Xiao doesn't even know the fellow Taoist sitting above?" Xiao Hua's gaze swept over. Indeed, he really didn't know any of them. He could only smile bitterly and said, "This one really doesn't know any of them. Fellow Taoist Moon Moat, please teach me." No problem." Moon Moat stroked the sparse beard on his chin and said like a teacher, "Look at the cultivator on the left of fellow Taoist Huang. That lean and tall one is our country of Shi's famous sect, Flowing Light Sect Su Mingyu. This person is skilled in water magic. Then look at the one on fellow Taoist Huang's right. The one with a sallow face is also an extraordinary cultivator. He is fellow Taoist Xie Yujiang's fellow Taoist Xie Yujiang. Counting down from fellow Taoist Su Mingyu, there are fellow Taoist Chong Sikang of River Jade Sect, fellow Taoist Zhu Feng of Qi Ming Sect, fellow Taoist Lan Ping of Mulan Mountain. These are all from big sections. Looking at fellow Taoist Xie Yujiang, fellow Taoist Qi Ming of Chu River Sect, fellow Taoist Zhu Huifeng of Shuiyu Mountain, fellow Taoist Li Mingzhu of Shuiyu Mountain. Soon after, he pointed to the cultivators behind him and said with a smile, "Behind them are the cultivators or guests of aristocratic families like yours and mine. The most famous ones are, of course, Tushan's Chu clan's Chu Yuchong, Yun Haojia's Yun Mo, Mingfeng Zhang Wuxing, Ipu's Jing clan's Jing Lily, and Xuanwei's Zhao clan Zhao Fanling. As for the others, they're just general names. There's no need for this old man to talk about them." Chapter 1929. Then Yu Chuan waved his hand again and said, "The people from the other families are all nameless. I'm afraid I don't know either. I presume fellow Xiao doesn't have any interest in knowing." That's true." Xiao Hua followed Yu Chuan's finger and looked at the many cultivators with different appearances. He felt it was very novel. This kind of gathering of foundation establishment cultivators, to be honest, was his first time. Thinking that he would encounter many such things in the future, he listened very carefully. When Yu Chuan waved his hand, Xiao Hua immediately knew that Yu Chuan was talking about all Qi refinement cultivators, not foundation establishment cultivators. When Chang Li Hao and the others heard this, their faces turned slightly red. If it wasn't for Xiao Hua, they would be nameless, as Yu Chuan said. But even so, Mo Cloud Village was really nameless in the country of Shi. It couldn't even compare to Misty Mountain. In this kind of occasion, it could only be nameless. "Oh, right, fellow Yu," Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said in a low voice, "I was also sent out by the family head at the last minute. There are many things I don't know. Let me tell fellow you something. This is my first time representing Mo Cloud Village. I just came to see and have no plans. So I want to ask fellow Taoist, what magic tool did Tianmin Mountain's Huang family take out? How did it attract the experts of a cultivation sect like Lumen Sect? Then he looked around, and so many people from cultivation families came. It's really out of my expectations. Is that so? Yuchuan glanced at Xiao Hua with a "You want to deceive me? You want to pry for information?" expression and said with a smile, "Since fellow Taoist Xiao can come, how can you not have such thoughts? A handy magic tool for you and me is like adding wings to a tiger." Hee, Xiao Hua smiled bitterly and said, "There are many experts in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. I know my limits. Forget it. If fellow you doesn't want to say it, then don't say it. Fellow Taoist Huang will say it in a while." Fellow Taoist Xiao is wrong. Yuchuan saw that Xiao Hua didn't ask anymore and lost interest. He chuckled and said, "This kind of thing, everyone knows it in their hearts. How can fellow Taoist Huang say it on the spot? First, he will lose face. Second, it will embarrass the fellow who got the magic tool. No matter what, Taoist Yu still knows." Xiao Hua was bored, so he casually told Yuchuan, "That's natural. This Yu has met the Huang family's housekeeper, Huang Tianming. When I came here the other day, I heard him vaguely reveal some information." Yu Qian said proudly, "Please teach me, fellow Taoist Yu." Xiao Hua's face was filled with longing. "Sure." Yu Qian transmitted his voice. "This matter is rather secretive. I'll only tell fellow Taoist Xiao alone. Don't spread it out. Don't worry. This Xiao only knows fellow Taoist Yu in this hall. Who do you want this Xiao to tell?" Xiao Hua smiled embarrassedly. "Oh well, who asked I to be fated with Taoist Xiao?" Yu Qian smiled and said, "I wonder if Taoist Xiao knows about the glory of Tianmin Mountain's Huang family." "Oh." Xiao Hua was stunned. He thought for a moment and could only smile bitterly. "I really don't know. I made a fool of myself in front of fellow Taoist Yu. You don't even know this?" Yu Qian said in astonishment. But looking at Xiao Hua's expression that didn't seem to be fake, he shook his head. "Young man, you need to add more knowledge about Xiaoyu continent's cultivation. Don't just put your energy into cultivation. Yes, this one understands." Xiao Hua nodded his head very sincerely. He also read a lot of books in Imperial Thunder Sect, but there were very few records about aristocratic families and the like. These things could only be obtained by traveling on one's own. "Do you know about spirit stones?" Yu Qian suddenly asked. "Spirit stones?" Xiao Hua was startled. "This one naturally knows. No matter what, this one is still a foundation establishment cultivator. How can I not know about spirit stones?" Then, fellow Taoist Xiao, have you ever thought about where spirit stones come from?" Yu Qian looked at Xiao Hua with a playful smile, as if he was looking at a country bumpkin. Xiao Hua suddenly felt that what he knew was really too little. But some memories entered Xiao Hua's mind. "Spirit stone mine," Xiao Hua blurted out. Yu Qian's eyes flashed with a trace of astonishment. Soon after, he nodded and said, "Speaking of spirit stone mine, even if this one doesn't say anything, fellow Taoist Xiao will definitely remember something. This one understands." Xiao Hua's heart surged with endless waves. "That's right. Why have I never thought about the origin of spirit stones? These spirit stones were naturally harvested from underground spirit stone veins. Naturally, there were also spirit stone veins on the Daybreak continent, which would inevitably be controlled by the big cultivation sections. Perhaps the Imperial Thunder Sect had their own spirit stone veins. And Tianmin Mountain's Huang clan was so arrogant before. They didn't put cultivation sects in their eyes. What else could they rely on? Isn't it just a spirit stone mine?" Just as fellow Taoist Xiao thought, several tens of thousands of years ago, when Tianmin Mountain's Huang clan was at their peak, they controlled this fire spirit stone mine. They were very rich, Yu Qian said with a sinister smile. "This kind of rich clan, you say, even if they have declined, how can the magic tools that Huang Tianla took out for his own granddaughter be inferior? This one understands." Xiao Hua was silent. Even if the quality is not good, It has already flowed out of the Huang clan these past few years. To be able to stay in the Huang clan's hands, it must be a good quality magic tool. Who knows, it might even be comparable to a low-grade magic tool. Indeed, Yu Qian nodded, listening to Huang Tianming's words, and Yu Qian still wanted to say it. But at this moment, Huang Tianming stood up, coughed twice, and said clearly, "Fellow Taoists, this one has been somewhat slow these past few days. Here, this one apologizes to everyone." As he spoke, he cupped his hands towards everyone. He, fellow Taoist Huang, is too courteous. Next to Huang Tianla, Limitless Sex, Su Mingyu said with a smile. In these past few days, this one has been eating and sleeping in a Huang clan. Even my cultivation has improved. If it's an apology, this one has to apologize first. Ha, fellow Taoist, Su is right. On the other side, Chu River Sex, Qiming also said with a smile, "We haven't even done anything yet, and we've already received such hospitality from fellow Taoist Huang. What can we complain about?" Everyone in the Vermilion Bird Palace hall chimed in. This is all due to fellow Taoists giving this one face. Huang Tianla still said with a deadpan expression, "How can this one not know?" However, in the past year that my granddaughter has been ill, many capable people and crafty people have come, but no one has been able to cure Xiang Er's illness. This old man's mood is also extremely bad. Therefore, this old man made up his mind a month ago. This time, I've invited all the experts I know in the country of Xi. If any fellow Taoist is able to cure Xiang Er's illness, then that person will be the benefactor of my Huang clan and also Xiang Er's good fortune. If no fellow Taoist can see the clues, this one still has to thank fellow Taoists for coming all the way here and placing great importance on my Huang clan's matters. This is also Xiang Er's fate, and this one does not dare to force it. Chapter 1930. There are many capable people in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Moreover, your granddaughter's fortune is profound. She will definitely have the ending that fellow Taoist Huang hopes for. Li Mingzhu of Shuiyu Mountain spoke with a voice like an aureole. Many thanks for fellow Taoist Li's good intentions. Huang Tianla smiled and waved his hand. The jade cup on the table flew up, and Huang Tianla easily caught it. He raised it forward and said, "Come, I, Huang Tianla, represent the Huang clan of Tianmen Mountain to toast everyone with a cup of spirit wine. Many thanks, fellow Taoist Huang." Everyone stood up and raised their cups with a smile. Of course, Xiaohua also stood up and frowned as he looked at the sparkling clear wine in the cup. He didn't like spirit wine, and when he saw Huang Tianla's smile, it was clearly filled with bitterness. Under these circumstances, no matter how delicious the spirit wine was, Xiaohua didn't have the heart to drink it. Thus, he waved his hand and sent the wine cup into the space. Fortunately, everyone was savoring the taste of the Huang family's spirit wine, so no one paid attention to Xiaohua. Otherwise, this kind of situation where the wine cup disappeared after tasting the wine would be laughable. After everyone finished drinking, Huang Tianla pointed his finger again, and a wisp of dark green spirit wine poured into the wine cup from the jug. Everyone, my Tianmen Mountain hasn't been so lively for a long time. Alas, unfortunately, it's not a happy occasion. However, since everyone came to my Huang clan, you're still my Huang clan's friends. In the future, if you need my Huang clan's help, please send a message. Come, for the sake of giving my Huang clan face, I thank everyone. While speaking, everyone drank the second cup in one gulp. Fellow Taoist Huang, Chu family's Chu Yuchong smiled and said, "The spirit wine of the Huang clan is indeed delicious. Within the coldness, there's a trace of heat. It's something that our families can't compare to." Chu Yuchong is also very willing to drink a few more cups. However, if fellow Taoist Huang toasts left and right like this, I'm afraid Chu will be drunk in a while and won't have the chance to treat your granddaughter. Fellow Taoist Chu is joking. A bitter smile appeared on Huang Tianla's face. I already knew fellow Taoist Crooked Soul's alcohol tolerance, so how could he have gotten drunk? Come, let this Huang propose a third toast to fellow Taoists. I beg the heavens to protect our cultivation families. Don't let the disciples of other families and the disciples of other sects encounter such strange things again. Well, since Huang Tianla had said so, no one could not help but raise their glasses. Moreover, everyone could see that Huang Tianla was drowning his sorrows in alcohol. Ha ha, fellow Taoist Huang is indeed in a good mood. You're still in a mood to drink wine with such a big family matter. A slightly hoarse voice rang out. It actually came from outside the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Which fellow Taoist? Huang Tianla exclaimed in surprise. However, when he saw the short, fat, and pockmarked Middle Foundation Establishment cultivator enter, his expression changed. What? Fellow Taoist Huang, do you not welcome me? The Foundation Establishment cultivator was wearing a suit of armor. Behind him, there were two other cultivators wearing the same suit of armor. Surprisingly, they were also early-stage Foundation Establishment cultivators. So it's fellow Taoist Shang Qinghe from Haoming City. I wonder if fellow Taoist Shang has come by himself or on behalf of Haoming City. Huang Tianla asked with an indescribable smile as he held the wine cup in his hand, unable to drink any more. He stared at the cultivator's footsteps and asked, "Is there a difference?" Shang Qinghe did not directly answer. Instead, he walked to the front of the hall and swept his gaze across the hall. Finally, his gaze landed on a cultivation family's table not far from Huang Tianla's. He stared at the Foundation Establishment cultivator from that family and walked straight over. Under his gaze, a trace of fear flashed through the Foundation Establishment cultivator's eyes. He slowly stood up as Shang Qinghe walked. "Fellow Taoist, you don't mind if I sit in your seat, do you?" Shang Qinghe said coldly. Just as the Foundation Establishment cultivator hesitated, the two early-stage Foundation Establishment cultivators behind Shang Qinghe took a step forward with a whoosh. There was no pressure, and the two of them didn't even look at the cultivator. However, the two cultivators exuded a murderous aura and a bloody aura. As a result, the cultivator trembled and involuntarily took half a step back. However, as soon as he took a step back, he came to his senses. Even so, he couldn't move forward even if he wanted to. "Fellow Taoist Lu Fan. Please sit here." Huang Tianla quickly smiled and pointed a seat closer to him. That seat was occupied by a Foundation Establishment cultivator and two aura refining disciples, so there was still room for them to sit next to the table. No need. Lu Fan's expression changed a few times. He was truly embarrassed. He swung his sleeves and turned to leave. The several aura refining disciples beside him also stood up in a hurry and wanted to leave. "Lu family from Chanchi. What's wrong? Fellow Taoist Lu, do you have a problem with my arrival? Or do you have a problem with me taking your seat?" Shang Qinghe didn't sit down, but said coldly to Lu Fan, "What? Fellow Taoist Shang, this is Tianmin Mountain, not Haoming City. I don't need to tell you, the captain of the city guards, what do I want to do?" Although Lu Fan was timid, he couldn't help but retort, Of course I can only manage the order of Haoming City. The order of Tianmin Mountain definitely doesn't need me." Shang Qinghe laughed. "However, you want to leave as soon as I arrive. Isn't that not giving me face?" Lu Fan gritted his teeth and looked at the people in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. These people had different expressions in their eyes. Some were pitiful, some were lucky, and some were mocking. I suddenly remembered there's still an important thing I haven't done. Lu Fan cupped his hands and smiled at Huang Tianla. "Therefore, I have to leave first. Fellow Taoists." But just as Lu Fan turned around and cupped his hands to gesture to the cultivators in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, a cold light flashed in Shang Qinghe's eyes. He winked at the two city guards beside him. The cultivator on the left rubbed his hands, and a series of confinement spells were thrown at Lu Fan. "What are you doing?" Lu Fan certainly paid attention to the movements of Shang Qinghe and the other two. Seeing that the opponent actually launched a sneak attack, he was shocked. He hurriedly waved his hands and wanted to cast a spell. However, just as he activated his dermic powers, the cultivator to the right of Shang Qinghe slapped his hand, and a silver saber that was 3 feet long appeared in his hand. He swung it, and there was a flash of light on the saber that was half a foot long as it sliced through Lu Fan's neck. Poor Lu Fan. He was already trembling with fear. Seeing that someone had launched a sneak attack on him, he hurriedly counterattacked. But he didn't expect that the second city guard would actually kill him. Moreover, these 2 city guards cooperated well. Even Xiao Hua in the distance was surprised. So how could he dodge? With a pu sound, a mouthful of hot blood spurted out from Lu Fan's decapitated neck and sprayed out over 2 feet for no reason. His head, which had died with his eyes wide open, also fell onto the crimson-red ground of the Vermilion Bird Palace. Fellow Daoist Shang, what are you doing? Huang Tianle was furious. He jumped out and asked, Fellow Daoist Lu Fan is an honored guest invited by my Tianmen Mountain. How can you casually kill him in front of me? 2 idiots, Shang Qinghe ignored Huang Tianle and swung his hands. With 2 crisp pa-pa sounds, he slapped the faces of the 2 early-stage Foundation establishment city guards. Who told you to attack? Didn't you see that the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall is filled with early-stage Foundation establishment cultivators and chi refinement cultivators? Who can pose a threat to me? Your actions make me have to explain myself to fellow Daoist Huang. Yes, we know our mistake. The 2 city guards' expressions didn't change at all. They turned to Huang Tianle and said, Fellow Daoist Huang, we were eager to protect our master. We acted hastily and caused trouble. We will take responsibility for this matter. If fellow Daoist Huang wants to punish us, we are willing to accept our punishment. When Huang Tianle saw this, he was so angry that his whole body trembled. However, how could he punish these 2 city guards? Even if they killed people in Tianmen Mountain, he didn't have the right to kill the 2 city guards. Even if he could kill the 2 city guards, the mastermind wasn't these 2 people. He had offended Haoming City for no reason. Fellow Daoists, you are so reckless. You are really letting down the city guards. Although I don't have a right to punish you, but please give me your tokens. I will go to Haoming City in the future to see Daoist Master Yao Hong and ask him to uphold justice. Huang Tianle said helplessly. The 2 city guards said in unison, We can leave our lives behind, but we can't leave our tokens behind. Please forgive us, fellow Daoist Huang. Fellow Daoist Huang, the tokens of the city guards of Haoming City are proof of identity. If you take the tokens and do something evil, how can I explain it to the city lord? Shang Qinghe said coldly. I can let you punish these 2 city guards, but I can't give you my tokens. Huang Tianle thought for a moment and sighed. Forget it. Fellow Daoists are witnesses to this matter. I'm not afraid that Haoming City will deny it. Alas, the Lu family of Chanxi will wait for this matter. I will personally go and explain it to them. Then Huang Tianle waved his sleeves and returned to his seat. Several disciples of the Huang family came up and cleaned up Lu Fan's corpse. Then they took the chi refinement disciples of the Lu family away and replaced the spirit wine and other things on the table. Come, fellow Daoist Huang, let me offer you a toast. Shang Qinghe sat down and waved his hand naturally. The jade cup flew up, and he said with a smile. The 2 early-stage Foundation establishment city guards stood behind Shang Qinghe with their hands behind their backs. Fellow Daoist Shang, do you have anything else to say after drinking this wine? Huang Tianle looked at the wine cup in front of him and said with a fake smile. Of course. How can I not say anything when I am here? Shang Qinghe didn't care and said with a smile. In that case, fellow Daoist Shang, please wait. I haven't finished my 3rd toast yet. Huang Tianle said. Is that so? Shang Qinghe released his divine sense and quickly scanned everyone in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. He didn't even let Xiao Hua go. However, since Xiao Hua was sitting far away and was an early-stage Foundation establishment cultivator, and the cultivators around him were all 10th-stage chi refinement disciples, except for Xue Xue, why would Shang Qinghe take him seriously? Chapter 1931. I haven't finished my toast yet. Who dares to disturb my mood? Shang Qinghe said coldly. Huang Tianle's wine cup was raised in his hand awkwardly. He sighed and drank it in one gulp. I'll drink this cup myself. However, what I said earlier still stands. Ha ha ha, Shang Qinghe laughed and said, I'm late. I wonder what fellow Taoist Huang is talking about. It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with fellow Taoist Shang at all. Huang Tianle put down the wine cup and asked again, fellow Taoist Shang seems to have not answered my question yet. What question? Is it more important than my toast? Shang Qinghe asked curiously. Huang Tianle was not annoyed. He only chuckled and said, I'm just asking fellow Taoist Shang. Are you here to represent Hao Ming's city? Or are you here on your own? What's the difference? Shang Qinghe stopped drinking the wine and placed it on the table. He smiled and said, haven't I already answered this question? Of course there's a difference. Huang Tianle said unrelentingly, please answer, fellow Taoist Shang. So what if I am? So what if I'm not? Shang Qinghe still did not answer. If you're here to represent Hao Ming's city, then please get up. Don't sit down. My answer is the same as before. I will definitely not agree to Hao Ming's city's conditions. Huang Tianle said calmly, if fellow Taoist Shang is not here to represent Hao Ming's city, then sit down and listen to my arrangements like the other fellow Taoists. Shang Qinghe did not get up or answer. He only raised his wine cup and tasted it carefully. All right, Huang Tianle clapped and said, since fellow Taoist Shang is not getting up, it means that fellow Taoist Shang is not here to represent Hao Ming's city. I'm relieved. Hearing this, Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Shang Qinghe, who was sitting steadily behind the table, and the two city guards who looked like clay sculptures with interest. Fellow Taoists. Huang Tianle raised his voice and was about to speak when he heard Shang Qinghe clapping his hands and said, fellow Taoist Huang, I have something to say. Oh, fellow Shang, please go ahead. Huang Tianle was slightly taken aback, but he still replied with a smile. I heard that fellow Taoist Huang's granddaughter had some problems with her cultivation, and she still hasn't recovered after more than a year. That's why I'm here to see if I can help fellow Taoist Huang. Shang Qinghe said with a smile. Thank you for your kind intentions, fellow Shang. There are many fellow Taoists in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall who are as eager as fellow Shang. Fellow Shang, please wait for a moment. Huang Tianle quickly smiled apologetically. Really? These little aura refinement brats? Shang Qinghe's gaze shifted as he sneered. If they can contribute, why would they need us Foundation establishment cultivators? Furthermore, from what I've seen, all the fellow Taoists in the early stage of Foundation establishment are present. I'm afraid none of them will be of any use. What do you mean, fellow Taoist Shang? Huang Tianle frowned and asked, if I don't take a look first, who would dare to look? Shang Qinghe's voice wasn't loud, but it shook the ears of every cultivator. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Huang Tianle stared at Shang Qinghe. Shang Qinghe calmly pointed his finger, and the wine in the jade pot poured into his mouth like a thin thread. He didn't take Huang Tianle's gaze seriously at all. Since fellow Taoist Shang values Tianmen Mountain's reputation so much, fellow Taoist Huang, let fellow Taoist Shang be the first to treat. We're just thinking the same as fellow Taoist Shang. As long as fellow Taoist Shang can cure the illness, we're more than happy to be treated here by fellow Taoist Huang. Su Mingyu from the Lumen sect quickly said with a smile when he saw the strange scene. That's right. Several cultivators from other cultivation sects also echoed. Their cultivation was not as good as Shang Qinghe's, but they were not afraid of Shang Qinghe because of their sections. However, when they saw Shang Qinghe kill the chicken to scare the monkey as soon as he entered the door, they were also surprised. Seeing that Shang Qinghe actually wanted to be the first to treat Huang Mingxiang's illness, their hearts skipped a beat. They felt that Huang Mingxiang's illness was not as simple as they thought. In that case, who would be willing to take the lead? Fine, Huang Tianle said with a smile. Since fellow Taoist Shang thinks so highly of me, what's wrong with letting fellow Taoist Shang be the first to treat? Fellow Taoist Huang, why didn't you say so earlier? Shang Qinghe stood up and clapped his hands. However, I'm a cultivator in the middle stage of Foundation establishment. The price for letting me do it is not small. Huang Tianle's expression changed slightly, but then he forced a smile and said, "Why? Before fellow Taoist Shang came to my Tianmen mountain, didn't you know about the reward offered by my Tianmen mountain? Haha, is the life of your female cultivator more important? Or is the magic weapon more important?" Huang Tianle said with a smile, "Since fellow Taoist Huang loves your granddaughter and can take out a precious magic weapon, then you must be able to take out other things as well." Humph. Huang Tianle flicked his sleeves and said, "My Tianmen Mountain's Huang family has declined to this extent. If we can still take out other things, will the cultivators sitting here tolerate fellow Taoist Shang's want and humiliation? Fellow Taoist Shang, don't say anymore. I will definitely not agree to the conditions offered by your Haoming city. Fellow Taoist Huang, don't be anxious. Su Mingyu advised, fellow Taoist Shang has already said that he doesn't represent Haoming city. Let's see what his conditions are like. If it's possible and Meng Xiang can be cured, why wouldn't fellow Taoist Huang do it?" Huang Tianle did not seem to care about Su Mingyu's face. He snorted coldly and looked at the top of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. "Haha, well said, fellow Taoist Su." Shang Qinghe narrowed his eyes and said, "What magic weapon did you take out? It's just to send these chi refinement brats away. How can I take a fancy to it? If I take action, I hope fellow Taoist Huang will take out your sex Vermilion Bird Ring." "What? Vermilion Bird Ring?" Huang Tianle looked down from the top of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall in surprise and looked at Shang Qinghe with amusement. "Fellow Taoist Shang's appetite is not ordinary. Although you didn't directly ask my Huang family to give up Tianmen Mountain like last time, you immediately set your eyes on my Huang family's ancestral magic weapon. Hee, this is really beyond my expectations. Hee, there's still many things beyond fellow Taoist Huang's expectations. Fellow Taoist Huang, don't be anxious. Take your time and watch." Shang Qinghe sneered and said, "If fellow Taoist Huang doesn't want Huang Mengxiang to die young, take out the Vermilion Bird Ring. I guarantee that I will wake her up." Damn it, it's really this guy's surname Shang's doing. At this point, even Xiao Hua, who had just arrived at Tianmen Mountain, understood what was going on. Fellow Taoist Shang. However, Huang Tianle still shook his head and said, "It's not that I don't want to promise you. Fellow Taoist, don't you know? My Huang family's Vermilion Bird Ring has long been lost. Where do you want me to take it back?" "Haha, lost? That's your Huang family's ancestral magic weapon. How could it be lost just like that?" Shang Qinghe sneered and said, "I received accurate information that the Vermilion Bird Ring is in your Huang family's possession. If fellow Taoist Huang has the heart, why don't you make a blood oath and take a look?" Chapter 1932. Blood Oath. Huang Tianle laughed from extreme anger. "If I were to make a blood oath here, how would I have the face to see fellow cultivators in the future? Since you don't dare to make a blood oath, then the Vermilion Bird Ring will belong to your Huang clan." Shang Qinghe said slowly. "Fellow Taoist Shang," Huang Tianle waved his sleeve. "Xiang Er is my granddaughter. Whether I treat her or not is my business. Fellow Taoist Shang's conditions are too harsh. I can't agree. Please do as you please." "Ha ha ha," Shang Qinghe laughed. "I'm already here. You want me to leave just because you say so? How could it be so simple? What do you want?" Huang Tianle pulled his face and asked coldly. "If you want me to treat her, I'll treat her. If you don't want me to treat her, I'll treat her." Shang Qinghe took a few steps forward and said, "You just need to prepare the Vermilion Bird Ring. Ha, fellow Taoist Shang. You're not here to treat her, right? You're here to take my life, right?" Huang Tianle laughed. "That's right. It's not just yours. The lives of dozens of cultivators' sects and families in the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall are in your hands. Even if you leave them alive, they won't. Tell me, can your Sky Gate Mountain still exist in the Dawn Rain continent?" Shang Qinghe sneered. "You." Huang Tianle was so angry that his body trembled again. He pointed his finger at Shang Qinghe and didn't know what to say. Many people in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall were shocked. Most of them stood up and looked at Shang Qinghe in horror. The Chang siblings' faces were also ashen. They stood up while trembling. Xiao Hua and Xue Xue sat steadily. Fellow Taoists, Huang Tianle waved his sleeve and laughed. You are my Sky Gate Mountain's honored guests. Even if I have to risk my life, I'll guarantee your safety. Don't panic. Chang Lihao and the others saw Xiao Hua's calmness at this moment. Then they thought of everything that happened in the Cold River house and quickly sat down. However, they got closer to Xiao Hua. Hee, I'd like to see how you'll protect their lives. Shang Qinghe clapped his hand, and a 3-foot-long saber appeared in his hand. However, this saber was emitting a faint golden brilliance. Don't force me, fellow Taoist Shang, Huang Tianle said through gritted teeth. Did I force you? I'm just here to help fellow Taoist Huang. Shang Qinghe said innocently. Haha, Huang Tianle clapped his hands, and a small, lifelike vermilion bird statue appeared. He activated his mana, and the statue emitted a vermilion glow. In an instant, the glow was blinding. Go! Hearing Huang Tianle's soft reprimand, the vermilion bird within the brilliance began to flap its wings. Dozens of rays of brilliance flew out from the center and shot towards the 4 walls of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Bang! A burst of fire sounded. From the 4 walls of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, clusters of flames appeared. Those flames quickly spread upwards along the walls that were engraved with runes. When they reached the top of the palace hall, all of the flames began to revolve around the top of the palace hall. The runes on the walls moved upwards layer by layer, and the vermilion bird formed by the runes seemed to be shaking its feathers. Following the emergence of the flames, the windows and doors of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall that were previously exposed were now sealed. The entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall became a cluster of flames. Squeak! Although it wasn't as clear as Xiao Hua's phoenix celestial body, it was still soul-shaking. A vermilion bird formed by flames flew out from the top of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. An incomparably huge aura comparable to that of a nascent soul realm cultivator was emitted from the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. However, the face of the vermilion bird formed by flames wasn't clear. Even its eyes were closed. Fellow Taoist Shang, you forced me to do this. Huang Tianle's face was deathly pale, and his body was trembling slightly. Shang Qinghe didn't seem to care about the formation of the vermilion bird at all. He seemed to have a card up his sleeve as he sneered. The Huang family of Tianmen Mountain has always been struggling on the verge of death. Is it all because of the vermilion bird flame array of Tianmen Mountain? It's a pity that this formation, which is said to be able to kill even a nascent soul stage cultivator, has shocked the entire Dawn Rain continent. However, I know that this formation has long lost its effectiveness. What the Huang family's master can activate is merely a facade that lives up to its name. Eh? Is that so? Hearing Shang Qinghe's words, all of the cultivators under the Vermilion Bird's aura were aghast. Shang Qinghe was right. Even the city lord of Haoming City only came to negotiate terms. If the terms couldn't be reached, he would leave. He didn't want to be entangled with Tianmen Mountain at all. This vermilion bird flame array was a big key, and Shang Qinghe was actually inside it. He was so relaxed that he didn't care about it at all. You? How did you know? Huang Tianle's face became even paler. His eyes flashed with determination as he asked coldly. Ha! You don't need to know how I know. Shang Qinghe laughed loudly. Since I dare to enter the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall and am not afraid of being sealed, I naturally have my own confidence. So, fellow Taoist Shang doesn't plan to retreat? Huang Tianle said again. If fellow Taoist Shang retreats now, I'll pretend that this never happened at all. As long as fellow Taoist Huang takes out the Vermilion Bird Ring, I'll immediately turn around. Shang Qinghe still didn't give in. Okay, then I'll let you have a taste of Tianmen Mountain's Vermilion Bird Great Array that has lost its effectiveness. Huang Tianle spat a mouthful of blood essence onto the vermilion bird statue in his hand. It shook with difficulty. The vermilion bird in the ball of light flapped its wings. The 100-foot-tall vermilion bird flame also flapped its wings and rushed towards Shang Qinghe. The swaying flame rushed towards Shang Qinghe's face with its monstrous aura, suppressing Shang Qinghe's power. However, Shang Qinghe patted his forehead and released the power of a mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator. He was actually able to barely resist it. Under the activation of his magic power, not only did the protective yellow talisman and other things shine, but a long faint shadow also appeared on the golden saber in his hand. The vermilion bird flame flew past Huang Tianle's head and was about to rush towards Shang Qinghe. However, Huang Tianle let out a long roar and his entire body suddenly shook. A vermilion bird dharma body that was 3 feet in size rushed out from his body. Vermilion bird dharma body? Xiao Hua stared blankly for a moment, and the cultivator families with sharp eyes all cried out in astonishment. The 3-foot-tall vermilion bird dharma body rushed into the vermilion bird flame that was flying down from above. As the vermilion bird dharma body submerged into it, the vermilion bird flame instantly shrank to about 10 feet. Its previously unclear face suddenly appeared, and a pair of cold eyes also suddenly appeared. These eyes were staring at Shang Qinghe. Ouch! When Shang Qinghe saw that the vermilion bird's eyes seemed to be able to see through him, he couldn't help but be shocked. He didn't dare to be negligent. With a wave of his hand, a string of phantoms flew out from the golden saber magic weapon and slashed into the air. At the same time, Shang Qinghe cast several spells on himself, seemingly to strengthen his defense. Unfortunately, before the phantoms of the golden saber magic weapon could fly in front of the vermilion bird, they were fanned away by the vermilion bird's wings without a trace. Ignorant man, you misled me. Shang Qinghe was awakened by the terrifying vermilion bird flame in front of him. He shouted loudly and wanted to fly away. Moreover, he seemed to want to take out a magic weapon from his storage bag. However, the vermilion bird flew extremely fast. Shang Qinghe only flew half a foot, and the brilliance in his hand had not yet appeared. The vermilion bird passed through him and rushed to the 2 city guards in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm behind him without stopping at all. Boom, 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 boom. Red flames suddenly appeared on Shang Qinghe and the 2 city guards behind him. In an instant, the 3 people's bodies were ignited. Without waiting for the 3 people to do anything, and without hearing the 3 people's screams, their bodies were turned into ashes. Then, the exposed bones in the fire were also burned one by one, turning into ashes that fell to the ground. Squeak! There was another vermilion bird cry. The entire vermilion bird flame flew to the top of the vermilion bird palace hall and disappeared, but Huang Tianle's vermilion bird dharma body didn't come out. Of course, only Xiao Hua could see the vermilion bird flame fly to the top of the palace hall. The eyes of the others fell on the 3 flames that instantly killed the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. This is a cultivator in the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Su Mingyu murmured, "There's still 2 city guards in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm. It didn't have the power to fight back at all." Seeing the flames gradually dissipating, everyone's hearts were still beating fast. It seemed that they hadn't recovered from the shock just now. Cough, cough. Huang Tianle seemed to have aged a lot. He actually coughed twice and covered his mouth. He slowly walked to the side of the table and slowly sat down. When he raised the wine jug and poured himself a cup, he leisurely drank it. Only then did a faint blush appear on his face. Fellow Taoist Huang, Xie Yusher of Jingqi Peak sighed with emotion. The vermilion bird flame array is indeed worthy of its reputation. It is said that it can kill a nascent soul realm cultivator. It is indeed possible. Alas, the captain of the city guards of Haoming City died here. I'm afraid it will be difficult for fellow Taoist Huang to explain. Chang Si of the Jiang Yupai said worriedly. Huh? Didn't fellow Taoist Huang ask clearly earlier? Did you come here on behalf of Haoming City, or did you come here on your own? Su Mingyu smiled and said, "Since you came here on your own, don't blame others for your lack of skills. Besides, if you want to blame fellow Taoist Huang, you have to see if the vermilion bird flame array of Tianmen Mountain is willing. Thank you for your concern, fellow Taoists." Huang Tianle smiled and said, This bastard has evil intentions towards my Tianmen Mountain. As soon as he came, he killed our distinguished guest of Tianmen Mountain and forced me to take out my long-lost ancestral treasure. I killed him. Firstly, I can give an explanation to the Liu family of Chanchi. Secondly, I can also help Haoming City clean up the city. I think Taoist Yin Hong will also understand this matter. Everyone suddenly understood. No wonder Huang Tianla let Shang Qinghe kill Liu Fan so easily just now. It turned out that Huang Tianla already had the intention to kill him. However, they never thought that Huang Tianla, who was in the early stage of Foundation establishment, could kill Shang Qinghe, who was in the middle stage of Foundation establishment, and 2 city guards who were in the early stage of Foundation establishment. This vermilion bird flame array was really terrifying. Chapter 1933. Therefore, everyone unconsciously looked at the flames around the Vermilion Bird Palace. Fellow cultivators, Huang Tianla seemed to understand everyone's thoughts and smiled apologetically. I just activated the Vermilion Bird Formation and consumed a lot of spiritual power. I can't open the formation at this time. Don't be afraid. You are my distinguished guests. After I recover my spiritual power, I will open the formation immediately. Ha! Su Mingzong laughed and said, Fellow cultivator Huang, you are really treating us as outsiders. We have been staying in the Tianmen Mountain for more than 10 days. What evil intentions do you have? With the protection of this formation, we are safe, not to mention an evil guest like Shang Qinghe. Ha, that's right. All the cultivators laughed and felt relieved. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Xiao Hua frowned slightly and thought to himself. In order to kill Shang Qinghe, Huang Tianla threw the vermilion bird celestial body into the vermilion bird flame formation. Looking at his weak appearance now, I'm afraid it's not just a simple consumption of spiritual power. If there is no accident, Huang Tianla's life is in danger. Moreover, what does Shang Qinghe mean by an ordinary man misleads me? However, since the last sentence was heard by everyone, such as Su Mingzong and the others, Xiao Hua didn't want to be nosy. Fellow cultivators, please drink this 3rd cup of wine. I hope that good things are hard to come by. Today, we can find the cause of Xiang Er's illness. Huang Tianla waved his hand and let the disciples standing in the palace fill his wine cup. Good. Everyone finally finished the 3rd cup of wine and quietly waited for Huang Tianla's arrangement. Huang Tianla drank the spirit wine in the wine cup in his hand. Then he clapped his hand. With a pa-pa sound, the disciple who was standing behind him took a few steps back and walked to a decoration on the left side of the hall. He took out a token and pasted it on it. With the activation of spiritual power, the decoration emitted a faint red brilliance. The brilliance spread out for about 10 meters in front of him, and then there was a fluctuation of spiritual power in the space. It gradually faded like paint, revealing a crimson jade bed. On the jade bed, a young woman was sleeping soundly, and beside the woman was a middle-aged woman in tears. Another male cultivator who looked very similar to Huang Tianla was standing beside the jade bed with a sad face. Xiao Hua and the others' expressions changed when they saw the 2 cultivators around the 12th layer of qi refining appear. They'd all used their divine senses to scan the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, but none of them had discovered that there was actually still a restriction in that place. Furthermore, there were still people behind the restriction. Seeing the restriction open, the female cultivator wiped her tears and stood up from the bed, revealing her charming face. I, Huang Liang, and I, Yang Yu, greet fellow Taoists. The male and female cultivators bowed to the other cultivators and said, We thank everyone for coming from afar for the matter of my daughter. Oh, so it's Huang Tianla's son and daughter-in-law. Everyone suddenly understood. No wonder they hadn't seen Huang Tianla's son. It turned out they were all hiding here. However, seeing that Huang Liang and Yang Yu were only at the peak of qi refining, everyone understood even more. We don't dare. Thinking that Huang Liang might be the head of Tianmen Mountain's Huang clan in the future, no one dared to be negligent. Most of them cupped their hands and returned the greeting. Liang How is Xiang'er's condition? Huang Tianla asked. I'll let father know. There's no change. Huang Liang whispered. Good. Huang Tianla turned to the crowd and said, My family Xiang'er is here. I'm sure everyone can see it with their divine sense. Of course, everyone can come to the front and treat him carefully. However, everyone only has one chance, and the time is only the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. I hope everyone can understand. Then, with a wave of his hand, a crimson magic tool appeared in his hand. He said sorrowfully, This is Tianmen Mountain's magic tool, Sparrow Drink. If any fellow Taoist can wake Xiang'er up, this magic tool will belong to that fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over, and he saw that in Huang Tianla's hand was a magic tool that looked like an inkstone. A faint crimson radiance flowed within it. It was obviously an exceptional fire-type magic tool. He then looked at the surrounding aura refining cultivators, and their eyes all revealed greedy gazes. Fellow Taoist Huang, Su Mingyu said softly, From what Shangqing has said just now, it seems it has something to do with Xiang'er's coma. Fellow Taoist Huang was too careless just now. If it's a trick by that bastard, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for us to solve it. Huang Tianla waved his hand, and the magic tool, Sparrow Drink, was placed on the table. He smiled bitterly and said, It's not that I'm careless, but that bastard is too overbearing. If I only use this Sparrow Drink to counteract, how could I be so ruthless? That bastard not only covets my Tianmen Mountain's ancestral magic tool, but also wants to use everyone's lives to threaten us. It's not that I haven't thought of compromising and using this to exchange for Xiang'er's life, but is it that simple? Forget it. Su Mingyu sighed and said, It's useless to say more now. I'll be the first to take a look. I hope I can see something. Fellow Taoist Su, please. Huang Tianla stood up and accompanied Su Mingyu to the crimson jade bed. Huang Mengxiang's jade-like cheeks were extremely beautiful, and her thin and long eyebrows were enchanting. Although her eyes were slightly closed and her real expression could not be seen, her long eyelashes were trembling slightly, as if she was having a wonderful dream. It was really pitiful. Su Mingyu had already checked with his divine sense and found nothing unusual. He walked to the window, cupped his hands, and said to Huang Liang, Fellow Taoist Huang, I'm sorry to offend you. Senior Su, please. Huang Liang bowed in return. Su Mingyu stretched out his hand and placed a finger between Huang Mengxiang's eyebrows, transferring a wisp of true energy. However, after nearly half a cup of tea's time, Su Mingyu frowned and opened his eyes. A trace of confusion flashed in his eyes. He withdrew his hand and said with a wry smile, Fellow Taoist Huang, I've embarrassed myself. This girl clearly looks like she's asleep. There's nothing unusual at all. Senior Su, you're right. That's the problem. Yang Yu smiled apologetically and said Xiang'er has been the 9th layer of qi refining for a long time. How could she sleep so much? Even if she's really asleep, why can't she be woken up? She's been sleeping for more than a year. Her cultivation hasn't improved, but has regressed. Alas, forgive me for being powerless. Su Mingyu sighed. Although I've prepared some methods, it doesn't seem to be effective. Let's look at the other fellow Taoists. Haha, it's fine. Fellow Taoist Su, please take a seat. Huang Tianla smiled apologetically. When Su Mingyu returned to his seat, a few cultivators came over and asked in low voices. Su Mingyu answered them in full detail. Then, Jingqi Fengxie, you came forward and took out a diamond-shaped jade pendant from his storage bag. He said with a smile, This is my Jingqi Feng's magic tool, Rain Dew. It's used to clear the heart and purify the spirit. I specially brought it here. I hope it'll be useful. Chapter 1934. Okay, Senior Xie, please help. Huang Liang looked at it and nodded in agreement. Xie Yujiang did not hesitate. He waved his hand, and the raindrops flew on Huang Mengxiang's forehead. Then, Xie Yujiang cast a few spells on the raindrops. The raindrops emitted a light blue brilliance and turned into a palm-sized cloud. Then, like raindrops, a light blue liquid dripped from the cloud and fell on Huang Mengxiang's forehead. When the liquid fell on Huang Mengxiang's forehead, it immediately seeped into it and disappeared. However, after waiting for half a cup of tea's time, Huang Mengxiang still did not move. During this time, he only frowned slightly and licked his lips with his light red tongue. Alas! Xie Yujiang put away the raindrops and shook his head. It seems that it still can't treat the illness. I can't do anything. Thank you, fellow Taoist. Huang Tianla's expression did not change. He raised his hand and asked Xie Yujiang to return to his seat. Then, more than a dozen cultivators in the early stage of Foundation establishment used either magic tools or spells. There was even a cultivator who took out a smelly pill and wanted Huang Mengxiang to take it. Huang Tianla naturally refused. After the cultivator took a little of it, Huang Tianla took the pill and put it into Huang Mengxiang's mouth. Unfortunately, these cultivators could not wake Huang Mengxiang up. When it was Xiao Hua's turn, Xiao Hua simply didn't stand up and only waved his hand. That Huang Tianla also faintly nodded and indicated for the next cultivator to come up. For hours quickly passed. Not only had all the Foundation establishment cultivators seen it, even 90% of the other Qi condensation disciples had seen it. Only a few cultivators sitting near the entrance of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall had yet to stand up. At this time, a strong young cultivator stood up and walked to Huang Tianla. He bowed and said, Junior Zhengziho from Meng Country's Dengming Mountain greets Senior Huang. Oh, a disciple of Meng Country's Dengming Mountain? Huang Tianla was obviously stunned. Looking at Zhengziho's jade-like face and bright eyes, he smiled and said, I didn't expect the matter of my Tianmen Mountain to spread to Meng Country. I'll let Senior Huang know that this junior has come to the country of Shi to gain experience. Coincidentally, this junior has come to broaden my horizons. Zheng Ziho replied politely. Naturally, I hope that I can help Senior Huang to wake Miss Mengxiang from her coma. All right, go take a look. Huang Tianla nodded. This Huang's bounty didn't say that it was limited to the country of Shi. If you can save Xiang, I can give you the sparrow drink. Thank you for your generosity, Senior Huang. Zheng Ziho came before the jade bed and bowed respectfully to Huang Liang and Yang Yu. Only then did he reach into his bosom and pull out a small spirit storage bag. This little cultivator actually has a spirit storage pouch? Xiao Hua was very sensitive to this kind of thing and immediately recognized it. The other Foundation establishment cultivators soon recognized him as well. Their faces were either filled with realization or regret. In any case, there were many different expressions. Zheng Ziho opened the spirit storage bag and muttered something. Then he pointed his finger and a hornet-like spirit insect flew out from the bag. As soon as the spirit insect flew out, it made a soft, buzzing sound and circled Zheng Ziho twice before floating in front of him. Senior Huang, this is a spirit insect, hummingbird. This junior has raised it to check on Miss Mengxiang's condition. Zheng Ziho was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he asked respectfully, Hummingbird? Before Huang Tianla could speak, Xiao Hua was stunned. He immediately thought of the records in the insect scripture. Of course, he was just casually looking at it. Now that he saw a real spirit insect, he naturally thought of the records. Hummingbird, sensitive to all kinds of spiritual energy and spiritual objects. It has no attack power and is ranked 22nd. This spirit insect itself has no value. It's just that it can sense all kinds of spiritual energy. That's why it's ranked so high. Xiao Hua thought, this Zheng Ziho can raise this thing. It might be unexpected. Huang Tianla seemed to have heard of the hummingbird's name. He looked at it and nodded slightly. Thank you, Senior Huang. Zheng Ziho smiled slightly, revealing his white, jade-like teeth. He looked very graceful. Go, Zheng Ziho muttered the incantation again. After a moment, he pointed his finger. The hummingbird circled in the air for a while and then flew down. It actually drilled into Huang Mengxiang's straight nose. Zheng Ziho immediately sat down with his eyes closed and his palms facing the sky. His hands formed an unknown seal. Zheng Ziho's expression was indifferent at first, then a little stunned, then a little surprised, then a little sleepy. In the end, his brows wrinkled tightly and then relaxed again. He seemed to have a card up his sleeve. Huang Tianle's heart seemed to change along with Zheng Ziho's expression from time to time. When Zheng Ziho opened his eyes, he immediately said, "Honorable nephew Zheng." Zheng Ziho was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he faintly smiled and pointed his finger at Huang Mengxiang. Then, as if there was a heavy object hanging from his fingertips, he slowly lifted it up. The hummingbird slowly crawled out of Huang Mengxiang's nose. The hummingbird appeared to be very tired. It barely flew half a foot in the air before suddenly falling down. However, Zheng Ziho extended his hand and caught it. He immediately put it away in his spirit storage pouch. "Honorable nephew Zheng, you've worked hard." Huang Tianle knew that Zheng Ziho had exhausted his mind. He unconsciously felt warm in his heart and smiled. "How is the situation?" "It's all right. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." Zheng Ziho's voice carried a trace of exhaustion as he spoke in a slightly hoarse voice. Not only was Huang Tianle shocked, all of the cultivators in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall were greatly shocked. They didn't think that Huang Mengxiang's condition would be diagnosed by a little cultivator at the 8th level of qi refining. It was truly inconceivable. "Honorable nephew Zheng, please speak," Huang Tianle said happily. "I'll let Senior Huang know that Miss Mengxiang was implanted with a dream mirage butterfly." Zheng Ziho seemed to want to shock people to death and said without hesitation, "What? Dream mirage butterfly? How is this possible?" Huang Tianle shook his head. "Although this old man doesn't know anything about spiritual insects, I still know a little about them. This dream mirage butterfly has long been extinct in my Xiaoyu continent. How could it appear in my Tianmen mountain? Besides, in ancient times, the dream mirage butterfly was good at creating illusions. It was usually used in the eye of an illusion array. How could it be implanted in Xiang Er's body?" "That's right." Su Mingyu also smiled. "Although Meng Xiang is unconscious, it is completely different from the dream mirage butterfly's dream. If the ancient dream mirage butterfly appeared in Tianmen Mountain, I'm afraid the entire Tianmen Mountain would become an illusion, and we would all be people in the illusion." What the senior said is reasonable." Zheng Ziho was not in a hurry and said, "Just now." This junior was also surprised. This junior didn't expect to encounter this ancient spiritual insect. However, this ancient spiritual insect seems to be a larva, just an egg. Therefore, it can only create a dream in Miss Mengxiang's body and can't affect others. This junior used the wasp gang to perceive the power of the dream and quickly escaped. Because of this junior also suffered a little injury. Dream mirage butterfly? Larva? Xiaohua frowned slightly. The insect scripture didn't say that the dream mirage butterfly was extinct, but it was listed as the first spiritual insect. But listening to Zheng Ziho's words, it was reasonable and didn't seem to be hiding anything. Then, how can fellow Zheng wake up Xiang Er? Huang Liang was overjoyed. He didn't care about the dream mirage butterfly. He just wanted to know how to wake up his daughter. Zheng Ziho was a little embarrassed and hesitated, but he didn't answer. "Nephew Zheng, if you have any difficulties, just say it." Huang Tianle frowned and said, "As long as this Huang can bear it, I will definitely do it." Zheng Ziho sighed and said, "This junior doesn't know how to transmit sound, so I will say it now. Just say it." Huang Tianle looked around and said calmly, "This junior is able to take out the eggs of the dream mirage butterfly, but this method is passed down from ancient times and has long been incomplete. This junior, because this method is too harmful to the harmony of the heavens, this junior has never used it." "Nephew Zheng, is it because you're not sure?" Huang Tianle asked. "I am sure," Zheng Ziho said awkwardly. "The method is to interfere with Miss Mengxiang's primordial yin." "Ah?" Huang Tianle was dumbfounded. "Of course, Senior Huang. This method is passed down from ancient times and will not affect Miss Mengxiang's foundation establishment." Zheng Ziho quickly explained with a red face. But even if he explained, How could Huang Tianla's brows loosen? How could everyone in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall not be stunned? Primordial Een. How could it be interfered with that will? A female cultivator's primordial Een could only be picked by her dual cultivation partner. Others could not touch it. Of course, the primordial Een of a female cultivator of the Immortal Beauty sect was originally for sale and could not be generalized. But since Huang Mengxiang's primordial Een could not be touched at will, she could only sleep sweetly in the dream created by the dream mirage butterfly's larva until she finally died of old age. But if Huang Mengxiang's primordial Een was touched, she could only dual cultivate with that person. Otherwise, she could only guard it for the rest of her life. This junior has nothing else to say. If Senior Huang is willing, this junior will first report to the sect. This matter is really beyond this junior's expectations. So, I asked Senior Huang to reconsider. Zhang Ziho's face was red as he cupped his hands to Huang Tianla, Huang Meng, and Yang Yu, then silently walked back to his seat. Gina, what do you think? Huang Tianla had no choice. After all, he was only a grandfather. If this matter really concerned Huang Mengxiang's life, he could only ask Huang Mengxiang's parents. When Yang Yu and Huang Meng heard Zhang Ziho's words, they had been communicating with each other for a long time. The two of them seemed to be somewhat willing, but also somewhat unwilling. After all, Zhang Ziho looked good, and Wind God Ryu was worthy of Huang Mengxiang. But on the other hand, Skygate Mountain did not know much about the Zheng family of Ascending Light Mountain, and Zhang Ziho was only at Qi Refinement Stage 8, which could not be compared to Huang Mengxiang, who was at the peak of Qi Refinement Stage 9. Hearing Huang Tianla's question, Huang Meng communicated with Yang Yu for a while, then smiled bitterly and said, "Father, since it's the Dream Mirage Butterfly, unless it's an ancient secret technique, even if the Spirit Husbandry Sect disciples came personally, they would not be able to get rid of it. Furthermore, we can't try this method. If Heavenly Gate Mountain has made up our mind and the Zheng family is willing, we have no choice but to be cautious." Chapter 1935. Alas, how can I not be cautious? Huang Tianla smiled bitterly. Huang Mengxiang was his granddaughter, and Huang Meng had no children. If there was no accident, Huang Mengxiang's husband would be in charge of Tianmen Mountain. Even if the other branches would dispute, Huang Mengxiang's husband would get half of Tianmen Mountain's power. This was not something that could be decided casually. It involved the marriage between Shi Country's Tianmen Mountain and Meng Country's Dengming Mountain. Moreover, the cause of Huang Mengxiang's illness had been found, and the cure had been found, but who planted the eggs of the Dream Mirage Butterfly? What if the instigator was Zhang Ziho? This had to be carefully considered. Of course, Huang Tianla was also very clear that with Zhang Ziho's cultivation, it was impossible for him to sneak into Tianmen Mountain and easily sneak attack Huang Mengxiang, who was close to 100% Qi refinement. Moreover, he had never received any news about Meng Country's cultivators coming to Tianmen Mountain. "Father, there's still some cultivators behind. Why don't we take a look?" Huang Meng said fortunately. "Alas, since they're all here, how can we not give others a fair chance?" Huang Tianla waved his hand. However, as Huang Tianla expected, he also broke Huang Meng's delusion. Although the remaining Qi refinement disciples knew it was a Dream Mirage Butterfly, no one could do anything about it. They even walked around the jade bed, as if they were admiring Huang Mengxiang's beautiful face, and then returned to their positions. Alas, when the last Qi refinement disciple bowed and returned, Huang Tianla waved his hand and said somewhat powerlessly, "Thank you for coming, fellow Taoists. Today can be considered a happy ending." But at this moment, Xiao Hua's voice sounded again, "Fellow Taoist Huang, this little one is not talented. I didn't go forward just now, but now I suddenly thought of something, and I'm willing to go forward and try." Fellow Taoist Xiao? Huang Tianla was stunned. He looked at Xiao Hua's tall and thin figure and couldn't help but ask in surprise, "Mo Yun Village has an ancient method of controlling insects? Mo Yun Village? Ha ha!" Hearing Huang Tianla call out Mo Cloud Village's name, The cultivators from the surrounding sects and families were all shocked. Mo Cloud Village was too small. How could it have any ancient methods? Even Chong Li Hao and the others blushed and lowered their heads. They did not dare to look at the mocking eyes of the people around them. Oh, if that's the case, then I won't embarrass myself. Xiao Hua smiled and sat down again, appearing very casual. Oh, fellow Taoist Xiao. Huang Tianle was a little anxious when he heard this. He quickly smiled apologetically and said, I didn't mean anything else. I just blurted it out. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please don't overthink it. Fellow Taoist Huang, don't be too careful. Xie Yusher smiled and said, I went to Mo Cloud Village a few years ago and drank with Dao Frenchong. I haven't heard of Mo Cloud Village having any guest elders. This Dao Friend Xiao. When Xie Yusher talked about Dao Frenchong from Mo Cloud Village, although he said they drank together, his tone was filled with disdain. He didn't finish his evaluation of Xiao Hua, but his words were very clear. Although the other cultivation families in the Vermilion Bird Temple were not satisfied with Xie Yusher's attitude toward Mo Cloud Village, they remembered that the dream dragonfly was an ancient beast. Almost all of them came here from legends. If they couldn't do anything about it, what could the disciples of Mo Cloud Village do? If they stood up now, it would be more like they were trying to please the crowd. Zheng Ziho sat upright with his eyebrows lowered. He was incomparably respectful and gave off the feeling that he was unfazed by favor or humiliation. Most of the people around him looked at him, then looked at Xiao Hua and whispered to each other. Huang Tianle was a bit annoyed as he looked at the people around him and let out a sigh in his heart. He knew that people's hearts were the most unpredictable. Among all the cultivators here, there might not be many who really came to help him. Most of them were here for the Sparrow Guide treasure, and even more were here to travel. To put it bluntly, they were here to watch the fun. Not only was there Heaven Gate Mountain, there was also Ascension Mountain, and there was also the topic of Primordialine. How could they not like it? Perhaps they would become the laughing stock of others in the future. As for Xiao Hua standing up now, one reason was to ruin their mood and not let them see the fun in the future. 2. Xiao Hua also had the intention of waiting until the end to get up after finding out it was the dream dragonfly, which made these people a bit angry. Naturally, the most important thing was that they didn't care about Huang Mengxiang's life or death at all. Zhu Air. Huang Tianle naturally didn't like Xiao Hua's attitude, but Huang Mengxiang was the hope of Heaven Gate Mountain in his heart, so he had to lower his attitude. Yes, father. Huang Liang understood very well. He quickly walked in front of Xiao Hua, bowed respectfully, and said, Senior Xiao, my daughter has been plotted against by evil people for more than a year. Junior and Xiang, Er's mother, are burning with anxiety. Although fellow Taoist Zheng's treatment and methods are available now, if Senior has a better method, please give a try. Junior and others will be very grateful. Xiao Hua was the most soft-hearted. He just sat down because he wasn't satisfied with the attitude of Xie Yusher and others. How could he not help? Seeing Huang Liang bowing to him with a sad face and calling him senior, how could he sit still? He stood up and said with a smile, Fellow Taoist Huang, this Xiao is very clear about the pains of parents. Since this Xiao came to Heaven Gate Mountain, although I didn't expect to be of any use, now that I can help a little, how could I not help? Besides, don't you have a Sparrow Guide treasure? My Mo Cloud Village is very envious. Haha, Senior Xiao, don't tease this junior, please. Huang Liang said with a wry smile. Darling Xiao, Shui said in a low voice. She had heard of the mirage butterfly before. She knew that this ominous creature had been eradicated by powerful experts in ancient times because it was harmful to heaven and earth. Now that it had suddenly appeared, it was very strange. Moreover, it was a mirage butterfly. Even if it was an insect egg, it was absolutely not something that a Foundation establishment cultivator could deal with. Xiao Hua looked back and smiled, saying, Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Seeing Shui so worried, Huang Liang's heart sank a little, and he had a little more doubts about Xiao Hua's methods. If Huang Liang was like this, there was no need to talk about the others. Zheng Ziho just raised his eyelids and looked down at the spirit wine on the table. The sparkling spirit wine was slightly overflowing, and it was very tempting and delicious. Xiaohua, on the other hand, was calm and walked to the side of the jade bed with light steps. "Thank you, Senior Xiao." Although Yang Yu didn't believe it in her heart, she didn't dare to neglect Xiaohua and respectfully saluted. Xiaohua looked at Yang Yu's flickering eyes and didn't care what she was thinking. He only looked at Huang Mengxiang's face that was like an ice sculpture. His heart was surging, and another scene unconsciously appeared in front of his eyes. Chapter 1936. Even when Zheng Ziho stepped forward just now, Xiaohua didn't feel like he could do anything. However, when Zheng Ziho placed a wasp into Huang Mengxiang's nose, fragments of memories suddenly emerged in Xiaohua's mind. These fragments weren't too continuous, but within the fragments, there was also a woman as thin as a match, a woman who looked both unfamiliar and familiar at the same time. She was quietly lying on a bed, and a left hand that emitted a silver brilliance was placed on her forehead. This woman looks very familiar, but I can't remember who she is. She seems to be a secular woman, not a cultivator. Xiaohua took a deep breath, calmed his mind, and released his divine sense, scanning Huang Mengxiang's Naiwan Palace. Huang Mengxiang was a 9th-layer qi refining cultivator, so his Naiwan Palace naturally had a defense. However, under Xiaohua's divine sense, which was comparable to a gold core cultivator, it was extremely easy to break through. However, it was obvious that there was nothing special inside. Xiaohua wasn't surprised. He stretched out his left hand, seemingly to comb a strand of hair on Huang Mengxiang's forehead, but he opened his delusion-breaker eyes, Senior Xiao. Xiaohua's action was rather inappropriate. Although he was in the early stage of foundation establishment, his appearance was young, not much different from Huang Mengxiang's. Stroking a woman's hair like this naturally made Yang Yu feel uneasy, so he immediately reminded Xiaohua. "You, Huang Tianle scolded in a low voice, displeased. Xiaohua had already seen through Huang Mengxiang's Naiwan Palace. It was exactly like the fragment in his memory. There was indeed a light brown dot in the Naiwan Palace. It was extremely small and could evade divine sense. It's okay. I've already seen through it. However, it seems different for what little Fringing said. This should be a kind of spiritual puppet, right? Spiritual puppet?" When Xiaohua said this, not only Huang Tianle, but the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall burst into laughter. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, you're not mistaken, right? I've never heard of any spiritual puppet. Are you talking about Gu? Gu is a mysterious existence in the deepest part of the Meng Mountains, similar to witchcraft. They're even more mysterious than soul cultivators. How? How could they come to Tianmen Mountain and plot against an innocent female cultivator?" Xie Yuqi asked in disbelief. Qimingzong's Zhu Feng also shook his head slightly. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, this you also thought highly of you before, but your words are really unreliable. It's even scarier than the dream mirage butterfly. This Zhu once faintly heard from the seniors that some devil cultivators, because they failed to cultivate devil arts, used puppets instead. Perhaps they're the soul puppets that you mentioned, but they were also devoured by the soul puppets. This thing is even scarier than the dream mirage butterfly." Chu River Sec's Qiming also smiled. "I share the same thoughts as fellow Taoist Zhu. If the dream mirage butterfly's condition is similar to Huang Mengxiang's, then this so-called Gu or soul puppet probably doesn't have the same symptoms." The others were all talking at once, making it seem like they were more knowledgeable than Xiaohua. Xiaohua was very indifferent, looking at Huang Tianle without saying anything. Huang Tianle hesitated slightly and asked, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, if it's a soul puppet or Gu, are you sure you can cure it?" Before it's cured, who dares to make a guarantee? Xiaohua didn't have full confidence in activating the silver brilliance of the illusion breaker eye. Huang Tianle thought for a moment and said loudly, "Nephew Zheng, what do you think?" Zheng Ziho stood up respectfully, his expression unchanged, and said with a smile, Senior Xiao naturally has his reasons for saying so. This junior has nothing to say, but this junior has a question. How did Senior Xiao determine if it's a soul puppet? Naturally I saw it with my divine sense, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Huang Tianle didn't believe it himself. This Huang doesn't seem to have seen it. This Huang has also used divine sense many times. This junior doesn't have divine sense, so naturally I don't know if I can see it or not, Zheng Ziho said with a smile. However, since Senior Xiao can see it, can others also see it? This. Xiao Hua was a little tongue-tied, shaking his head. This is this Zhao's secret method. I'm afraid others can't. Jiang Yu, Sek Changxi, and the rest shook their heads again. If Xiao Hua directly said that he was a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, they might believe it a little. But at this time, Xiao Hua was a guest elder of Mo Cloud Stronghold. Who didn't know Mo Cloud Stronghold's foundation? Looks like I have to reveal my identity to the Huang family. Xiao Hua sighed and said in his heart. Just as Xiao Hua was about to transmit his voice, he heard Zheng Ziho cup his hands and say, Senior Xiao, since Senior also has a method to determine that Miss Mingxiang is under a soul puppet, and this junior determined that it's a dream mirage butterfly, of course, this junior doesn't have divine sense and can't examine. Then, can Senior join forces with this junior once? If Senior's judgment is correct, and this junior is wrong, then wouldn't this junior save a lot of trouble? We all want to wake Miss Mingxiang up, don't we? Anyone can do it. Great. Nephew Zheng is right, Huang Tianle said with great joy. All right. Xiao Hua was slightly taken aback. He wanted to refute, but he couldn't think of any suitable reason, so he could only nod his head. Zheng Ziho didn't wait for Xiao Hua to hesitate. He immediately walked in front of Huang Mengxiang, patted his hand, and took out his spirit storage bag. However, he only took out the spirit storage bag and placed it in his hand without opening it. He said very respectfully, Senior Xiao, please make the first move. This junior will listen to Senior's instructions. Seeing Zheng Ziho like this, Xiao Hua's vigilance disappeared. However, he still didn't understand why he had to make the first move. However, how could Xiao Hua be afraid of Zheng Ziho? He nodded slightly and swept his divine sense inside. However, just as Xiao Hua's divine sense entered Huang Mengxiang's Naiwen Palace, it swept across a light brown dot. It was a colorful and tiny insect egg. What's going on? Wasn't it just a moment ago? Xiao Hua was slightly shocked. However, it was only a slight shock. When his divine sense collided with the insect egg, his entire divine sense immediately began to spin. It was as if he had knocked open a majestic door. Xiao Hua felt a flash in front of his eyes. Everything changed. His entire body actually appeared at a ferry with biting, cold winds. Where is this? How did I? Who am I? Xiao Hua stared blankly at a wooden stake that stretched straight into the river at the ferry. He looked around in a daze. Xiao Hua, Xiao Hua. A crisp voice sounded from behind Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua suddenly turned his head. He saw a small, thin, weak, and very pretty girl running over and shouting, Why did you come out again? Your injuries haven't completely healed yet? Is that so? When did I get injured? Just as Xiao Hua thought of this, he suddenly felt an incomparable pain in his body. He couldn't help but reach out his hand to support his waist. However, what he touched was actually not a Taoist robe, but a cyan robe. The style was somewhat strange. Xiao Hua felt that this girl was very familiar. It was so familiar that it was as if she was engraved in his heart. However, he just couldn't call out her name. Xiao Hua, let me help you back. The girl very carefully supported Xiao Hua's arm. Her figure is actually slightly taller than Xiao Hua's by a bit. When Xiao Hua turned around, he saw that there was actually an open, thatched cottage beside the ferry. Following the girl's footsteps, Xiao Hua walked into the thatched cottage with some difficulty. When he sat on the withered grass on the ground of the thatched cottage, the girl said in a somewhat low voice, Xiao Hua, I will leave with Shirtai tomorrow. Your injuries haven't healed yet. My heart is very uneasy. Shirtai. Xiao Hua was even more at a loss. However, he still very naturally said, "All right, Shirtai is a good person. If you go with her, you will definitely be able to find yourself." But the girl wanted to say something, but she was also a bit shy. After thinking for a long time, she took out an item from her bosom and extended it in front of his eyes. She said to him in a trembling voice, "Brother Xiaohua, after we part today, I don't know when we will meet again. I found this in my own pouch. It is something that I always carry with me. I don't remember where it came from. However, it looks somewhat familiar to me. It must be something that belongs to me. Today, I will give it to you as a souvenir." When Xiaohua carefully looked at it, he saw that the jade-like girl was holding a pair of pearl hair clips. He couldn't help but be greatly alarmed. He very naturally waved his hand and said, "How would I dare to accept such a precious thing?" The girl angrily said, "What's so precious about this? Is it because it is valuable? However, even if it is worth a lot of money, no one uses it. If it is casually thrown away, how much money would it be worth? However, even if it is worthless, if someone cherishes it, then wouldn't it be more precious than this thing that no one wants? If you don't want it, then I will just throw it into the river." Hong Xia. The girl raised her eyebrows. She looked very much like Fairy Hong Xia. Xiaohua couldn't help but call out. When the girl heard Xiaohua actually call her Hong Xia, her face became even more desolate. She said, "You actually forgot the name that you gave me?" "Ah, you are." Xiaohua was very anxious. However, at this moment, the girl's face suddenly changed. She actually turned into the beautiful Huang Mengxiang. Huang Mengxiang was clearly startled. She looked around in amazement and shouted loudly, Where is this place? Are you this concubine's husband? Husband, save me." Soon after, she actually lost her head out of fear and threw herself into Xiaohua's arms. She tightly hugged Xiaohua. Meng, Xiang. Xiaohua suddenly felt a pain in his head. The god's guidance that he hadn't used for a long time was suddenly activated. Xiaohua's figure immediately rushed into the sky from where he was standing. He flew straight up into the sky, flying into an unknown number of clouds. Like a chain breaking, Xiaohua's divine sense suddenly appeared in Huang Mengxiang's Naiwan palace. Before this, his divine sense was still that multicolored insect egg. Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. His entire body was covered in cold sweat. "You dare!" Xiaohua shouted loudly. His divine sense rushed out of Huang Mengxiang's Naiwan palace. He clapped his hands, and a great confinement technique smashed towards Zhang Ziho. However, the moment Xiaohua used the technique, the corners of Xiaohua's mouth curled up into a smile. The magic power on his body flickered, and he easily withdrew the technique. Zhang Ziho, who was standing next to Xiaohua, had his spirit storage pouch raised in his hand, just like Xiaohua's divine sense. However, at this time, Zhang Ziho's eyes were slightly closed. His face was filled with happiness. Even his eyes were fiercely moving under his eyelids, as if he was having a dream that he had been drooling for a long time. Chapter 1937. Xiaohua immediately understood and sneered. Sure enough, unrighteousness leads to self-destruction. I haven't even made a move, and I've already fallen into my own trap. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and took Zhang Ziho's spirit storage bag. Then he unceremoniously took off the storage bag hanging on his waist and put it into his arms. Fellow Xiao, what's going on?" Huang Tianle was stunned and hurriedly wanted to stop Xiaohua's actions. After all, Xiaohua's spirit sense swept in for a moment. When Xiaohua swept out with his spirit sense, he immediately took Zhang Ziho's things. How could Huang Tianle not be shocked? Fellow Huang, didn't you see? Your so-called honorable nephew Zhang is the culprit who plotted against Huang Mengxiang. This Xiao was almost framed by him just now. However, it seems that this bastard's plan was flawless. I'm afraid that he didn't take into account this Zhao's cultivation level. He spun a cocoon around himself and suffered a backlash from his cultivation method. Xiaohua glanced at Huang Tianle and said with a smile, Sure enough." Huang Tianle originally had some doubts, But when he saw that although Zheng Ziho was standing motionless, he still had a sweet sleeping expression on his face, just short of lying down, just like Huang Mingxiang, he immediately understood. Any secret technique that was related to the Naiwan Palace was closely related to the divine sense. Presumably, this Xiao Hua in front of him practiced a secret technique that strengthened the divine sense, exceeding the expectations of Zheng Ziho's secret technique. Therefore, he was able to break through Zheng Ziho's secret technique and injure Zheng Ziho. Fellow Xiao, can you wake Zheng Ziho up? I'm very curious. How did he plot against Xiang? Moreover, his purpose. Speaking until here, Huang Tianle didn't continue. Zheng Ziho had already made it clear that he wanted to dual cultivate and obtain primordial yin. He must be coveting Huang Mengxiang and Tianmen Mountain's inheritance. What else was there to ask? Sorry, fellow Huang. Xiao Hua shook his head slightly. I don't know what cultivation method Zheng Ziho used. Naturally, I can't wake him up. However, Huang Tianle glanced at the storage bag that Xiao Hua had just put away. Fellow Xiao, this is just your side of the story. Who knows if what you said is true or false? Or maybe Zheng Ziho is innocent and you are the culprit? Xie Yuji's voice rang out, while Chang Si, Su Mingyu, and the others also slightly spread out, surrounding Xiao Hua in the middle. Xiao Hua, glanced at them and didn't seem to be afraid. He only said indifferently, even if I'm the culprit, my goal is that sparrow drink, right? I didn't think about primordial yin or the inheritance of Tianmen Mountain. If I can save Huang Mengxiang, fellow Taoist Huang won't be stingy with that magic tool, right? Fellow Taoist Huang, you are the master of this place. I and the others will listen to you. If you are willing, I and the others will immediately take down Xiao Hua and force him to cure Huang Mengxiang's illness. Zhu Huifeng of the Ward Cavalry said loudly with a sinister smile. Hell, Xiao Hua stood with his hands behind his back, completely ignoring them. He only looked at Xue in the distance, hinting her to be at ease. Why would Xue be worried? This was a fierce person who could casually kill a middle-stage Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator. In front of her were early-stage Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators. Why would she be worried? Huang Tianle hesitated for a moment, but in his heart he didn't care. After all, what Xie Yuji and the others said was reasonable, and he himself couldn't determine who was the culprit. However, the difference between Mo Cloud Village and Ascending Light Mountain was obvious. Huang Tianle hesitated again. Father, seeing Huang Tianle hesitate, Huang Meng immediately said in a low voice, Xiang is still unconscious. Even if Xiao Hua is the culprit, but he only wants the sparrow drink. My Tianmen Mountain's daughter can't compare to a magic tool. That's right. Huang Tianle quivered and came to his senses. He secretly gritted his teeth and waved his sleeves. Fellow Taoists, I understand your thoughts. I still have to thank you. However, under the Vermilion Bird Great Formation, how can I let the culprit escape? Even if fellow Taoist Xiao is the culprit, as long as you can save Xiang, and give me this magic tool, what can I do? Then he changed his tone. In addition, fellow Taoist Xiao may be free, but fellow Taoist Chong of Mo Cloud Village, I know him very well. When I have time, Tianmen Mountain will pay a visit to Mo Cloud Village. Haha, then I will welcome fellow Taoist Huang on behalf of fellow Taoist Chong. Xiao Hua didn't care at all, and Chong Li Hao and the others didn't care at all. Xiao Hua was forced by them. So how could he make a move first? How could an upright cultivator who could challenge a middle-stage Foundation Establishment Realm cultivator for a mortal be a person who would plot against a female cultivator? Very good. Huang Tianle nodded. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please make a move. We will wait and see. Haha, of course I can make a move, but I ask fellow Taoist Huang and fellow Taoist Yang to immediately carve the jade bed, and I also ask fellow Taoist Huang to set up the restriction again. Xiao Hua's request was somewhat difficult for Huang Tianle, but after all, this was Xiao Hua's secret technique, so it was normal that he didn't want others to see through it. As for Xiao Hua being alone with Huang Mengxiang, Xiao Hua was a Foundation Establishment Realm senior. Although he looked young, he was much older than Huang Mengxiang, so it wasn't a big deal. Seeing that Yang Yu was a bit worried, Huang Tianle flicked his sleeve and said, "Chang, are you come out? Xiang Er's life is important. Let fellow Taoist Xiao go in." "Yes, father." Yang Yu didn't dare to disobey and reluctantly walked to Huang Chang's side. Huang Chang reached out and held her hand to comfort her. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, please." Huang Tianle raised his hand and waited for Xiao Hua to walk to the side of the jade bed. Huang Chang took the command medallion from the Huang family disciple beside him and set up the restriction. Seeing Xiao Hua's figure disappear, the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall was filled with whispers. Everyone's gaze was on the people from Mo Cloud Village. When Xiao Hua saw the restriction form, he swept it with his divine sense and waved his hand. Dozens of spirit talismans appeared in his hand and were placed on different positions of the jade bed. As Xiao Hua activated his magic power, a rabbit formation was formed, isolating all probing. Outside the restriction, Huang Chang unconsciously frowned and transmitted his voice to Huang Tianle. Huang Tianle's expression didn't change, and he also looked at Shui and the others. Xiao Hua walked to the front of the jade bed and looked at Huang Mengxiang, whose face was slightly flushed. He knew that this girl who was yearning for love was weaving her beautiful dreams. He couldn't help but smile, but when he reached out his hand, his expression became serious. After all, the delusion breaker Dharma I had only just awakened. All these years, he had only looked at it. It was only on the night of Yi Yuan's sneak attack that he learned that the delusion breaker Dharma I might have the ability to emit silver light. As for the use of the silver light, Xiao Hua only knew a little today. Xiao Hua stretched out his left hand and pointed it at Huang Mengxiang's forehead. He saw the light brown dot quietly floating in his Niwen palace and thought with all his might, "Withdraw, withdraw, withdraw." To be continued. Chapter 1938. Xiao Hua didn't know how many times he thought about it, but the silver light still didn't appear. Damn it. Luckily, there's no one here to watch me make a fool of myself. Xiao Hua looked around with a guilty conscience. Then he clenched his left hand and focused his mind on the Dharma I imprint between his eyebrows. Soul thread? Xiao Hua immediately remembered the soul-absorbing bell. His Dharma, I could see through the soul thread and the location of the suspected soul in his mind. He had refined the soul thread before, so if he could activate the soul cultivation technique of the 9 heavens of the spirit origin, he should be able to activate the soul thread. If the soul thread moved, then the Dharma I imprint connected to the soul thread should also be able to move, right? After thinking it through, Xiao Hua bent down and aimed his forehead at Huang Mengxiang's forehead. He closed his eyes and activated the soul cultivation technique of the 9 heavens of the spirit origin. Sure enough, in just a moment, the mysterious soul thread in Xiao Hua's mind gradually sent a mysterious black gas into the Dharma I imprint of the Buddha relic. As the black gas intensified, the Dharma I imprint gradually revealed itself. When the outline of the Dharma I imprint gradually formed, Xiao Hua felt a heat in between his eyebrows. A faint silver light shot out from the Dharma I imprint and directly shone into Huang Mengxiang's Niwen palace. It firmly covered the light brown, but in fact, it was a multicolored dot. As the silver light shone, the light brown dot gradually rose until it flew out of Huang Mengxiang's forehead. The moment the light brown dot flew out, Huang Mengxiang stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. Then he raised his arms above his head and stretched his body before he yelled, "Hey, hey, 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 hey." Xiao Hua saw Huang Mengxiang wake up and smiled in his heart, but he didn't dare to move. The dot had just come out of the silver light. However, what happened next made Xiao Hua very embarrassed. He saw Huang Mengxiang stretch her waist, her curves straightened, and then she opened her eyes. Seeing Xiao Hua's face, Huang Mengxiang wasn't surprised at all. She rubbed her eyes and said, "Husband." Then she reached out her hands and hugged Xiao Hua's neck. fellow Taoist Huang. Xiao Hua anxiously shouted. Seeing that Huang Mengxiang was ignoring him, Xiao Hua simply ignored him and concentrated on sucking the light brown dot to a place not far from his glabella. Then, not daring to use his divine sense, he swept his mind and sent the egg of the dream sea butterfly into his space. Husband, why are you so cold to this lowly concubine? Feeling that Xiao Hua didn't move, Huang Mengxiang said with extreme grievance, Husband and concubine have been loving each other for more than 10 years. Could it be that you're already tired of this lowly concubine? Fellow Taoist Huang. Xiao Hua very gently pushed away Huang Mengxiang, who was sticking to his body. Looking at Huang Mengxiang's beautiful face that was about to cry, he smiled and said, Those were all dreams. Now, I have already rescued you from the dream. Right now, we are in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall of your Tianmin Mountain. Dreamland? Huang Mengxiang's beautiful eyes flickered as she covered her mouth and giggled. Husband, you're really funny. How can I not know if it's a dream? Ah, then what is this Zhao's surname and name? Xiao Hua said with a smile. Naturally, your surname is Xiao and your name is Hua. Huang Mengxiang smiled faintly and said, This concubine has served you for more than 10 years. I even know every single hair on your body. How can I not know your name? Xiao Hua was dumbfounded. He didn't think that in the instant that the dream overlapped, Huang Mengxiang would know so much. Moreover, she had overlapped his image with all the beautiful dreams she had in the past year. Darling Xiao, Huang Mengxiang smiled again and said, You are the most adorable. You're already so old, yet you are still joking with this concubine. Xiao Hua and Fairy Hongxia had dual cultivated for a long time. How could he not know what Huang Mengxiang was thinking? Unfortunately, Huang Mengxiang was still a virgin. How could he take her innocence? Ha, fellow Taoist Huang, then tell me, what cultivation level should you be at? Xiao Hua said with a smile. Naturally, I should be at the nascent soul stage. Huang Mengxiang had just said this when she suddenly realized. Her face was pale as she said, How did I reach the 9th level of the qi refining stage? Husband, this is what is going on. Alas, Xiao Hua sighed his heart when he saw Huang Mengxiang so disappointed. Anyone who knew in their dream that they were already at the nascent soul stage, but when they woke up, they were only at the qi refining stage. How could they not be disappointed? Husband, tell me. Huang Mengxiang began to cry. Silly girl. Xiao Hua shook his head slightly and said in a low voice, You were originally at the 9th level of the qi refining stage. However, a year ago, when you're trying to break through to the 10th level of the qi refining stage, you were plotted against by someone. Because of that, you entered the dream. From the 10th level of the qi refining stage to the nascent soul stage, and everything that happened during that period were all your own thoughts in the dream. But in fact, you were lying on a jade bed and dreaming. Your parents were crying beside you, and your grandfather was trying everything for you. I just happened to come to Tianmin Mountain at the right time and woke you up. Of course, you have to ask Huang Meng and the others. Darling Xiao, Huang Mengxiang said in a sorrowful voice, I was extremely happy in my dream, so why did you have to wake me up? I would rather be with you in the dream than wake up from the dream. You can stay in the dream, but after all, it is the void. Everything is the void. I am the void, you're the void, cultivation is the void, and all the voids are also the void. What do you think is the meaning of that? Moreover, your father, mother, and grandfather are all grieving for you. If you abandon your family for the sake of those voids, and your future true love and dual cultivation, do you think it's worth it? Xiao Hua said softly. Huang Mengxiang continued to cry, but the sound of her crying gradually decreased. Presumably, she was slowly accepting this fact. Xiao Hua smiled again and said, However, I think you can also benefit from this disaster. In the dream, you have comprehended the foundation establishment stage, the gold core stage, and even the nascent soul stage. Tell me, if you continue to cultivate in the real world, won't you be able to break through to the nascent soul stage soon? Really? Huang Mengxiang raised her face with a smile. Tears still hung on her cheeks. Her beautiful face was like rain hitting a banana leaf, making people feel pity for her. Of course it is. Xiao Hua very naturally used his hand to pinch Huang Mengxiang's nose. However, after pinching, he was stunned. Wasn't this action too intimate? However, Huang Mengxiang enjoyed it very much. She raised her nose and said, "I like it the most when you pinch my nose." Sigh. Xiao Hua was immediately embarrassed. He said in all seriousness, "I am a foundation establishment stage cultivator, your senior. I am treating you as my junior." TCH, Huang Mengxiang rolled her eyes at Xiao Hua in disdain. She turned her head to look around and asked curiously, "Is this the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall? Where are mother and father?" "They are outside the formation. I will remove the formation, and they will be able to see us." Xiao Hua replied. Huang Mengxiang bit her lips with her jade-like teeth and said in a low voice, "Husband, this is the last time I will call you husband. I hope I can really call you husband in the future." "Don't, fellow Taoist Huang. I already have 2 dual cultivation partners." Xiao Hua promptly waved his hand. Since you have 2, can't you have a 3rd? Huang Mengxiang was really lively and said mischievously. "Let's not talk about this," Xiao Hua replied. "If fellow Taoist Huang is ready, I will remove the formation." "Don't." Huang Mengxiang was very anxious and said hurriedly. "Darling Xiao, let me kiss you again, just a little bit." Huang Mengxiang stretched out her little finger that was as white as a scallion. "No." Xiao Hua shook his head. "You didn't understand just now. Now that you understand, I can't let you do as you please." As he spoke, he waved his hand, and several waves of magic power swept over, about to put away the rabbit formation. I want." Huang Mengxiang suddenly pulled Xiao Hua's arm. "Don't move. The formation is about to open." Xiao Hua said in a frightening manner. Cough, cough. Huang Mengxiang's expression also became serious, and she promptly sat down. Although the crimson red on her face hadn't disappeared, her bearing was already solemn. "Sigh, now my daughter is a boy, so..." Xiao Hua shook his head helplessly. With a wave of his hand, he put away the dozens of sparkling talismans. Xiao Hua didn't notice that Huang Mengxiang was beside him, her nose slightly raised, her little mouth also pouting high, and her pair of watery eyes looking at him. Talismans? Huang Mengxiang saw that Xiao Hua actually put away the talismans and couldn't help but be surprised. At this time, Huang Meng, who was outside the restriction, saw that Xiao Hua put away the formation and hurriedly removed the restriction as well. In front of everyone, Huang Mengxiang, whose face was slightly red and whose eyes were incomparably quick-witted, was looking at the people of Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. "Fellow Taoist Huang, fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, "Father, mother, grandfather." Huang Mengxiang nimbly jumped up from the jade bed and jumped in front of Yang Yu in an instant. She hugged Yang Yu tightly and kissed Yang Yu's face with a smack. "Xiang'er." Yang Yu saw that her lively daughter had returned. Although she was extremely happy in her heart, she still lightly reprimanded. "Don't be like this. Why aren't you quickly thanking Senior Xiao?" This boy already thanked Senior Xiao earlier," Huang Mengxiang said as she blinked her eyes at Xiao Hua. That's right." Xiao Hua saw that Huang Tianle was also trembling with excitement, and said with a smile, "This Xiao has already saved little friend Huang. Can fellow Huang fulfill the promise?" Of course. Huang Tianle extended his hand and passed the sparrow drink on the table to Xiao Hua. Immediately after, he fished out a light red jade slip from his bosom. Chapter 1939. Xiao Hua took it and scanned it with his divine thought. He smiled and said, "Thank you, Cultivator Huang." "I don't dare." Huang Tianle sighed and said, "I didn't expect Cultivator Xiao to wake Xiang'er up. I was negligent earlier. What a coincidence. I didn't have any confidence at first. Thanks to this guy's reminder." Xiao Hua looked at Zheng Ziho, who was still standing there, and smiled. Huang Tianle sneered. Although the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain is declining, we can't be bullied. I will send people to Meng Kingdom to ask the Zheng family of Ascending Mountain why they came to Tianmen Mountain. Huang Mengxiang, who was not far away, had heard about the danger just now from Yang Yu. Her face was red. She waved her hand as if she was going to throw a yellow talisman at Zheng Ziho. Huang Tianle was so scared that he quickly waved his hand and said, Xiang don't move. This is evidence. Not only will we punish the Zheng family of Ascending Mountain, we will also interrogate them to find out who the mastermind is. This guy got lucky. Huang Mingxiang looked at Xiao Hua with her beautiful eyes. Xiao Hua quickly turned around and walked back to the table as if he didn't see anything. Congratulations, senior brother. You helped the Huang family get rid of the big trouble. Xue Xue smiled and said charmingly. Huang Mengxiang, who was far away, was also looking at them from afar. Congratulations, senior brother Xiao. Chang Li Hao and the others were all red as they bowed and said, I was just lucky. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Who are you waiting for? Chang Li Hao and the others were stunned when they heard that. Then they were overjoyed. However, after that, they were disappointed. The four of them looked at Chang Xiumei. I have a fire attribute body. Chang Xiumei was so excited that her face was shining. You got lucky. Xiao Hua threw the sparrow drink, and the jade bamboo slipped to her and said with a smile, You really gave it to me? Chang Xiumei took the sparrow drink and asked unconfidently, Actually, your cultivation is not high enough to refine this item. I intend to give it to Chang Li Hao. Unfortunately, his body's property does not match. I'm afraid it's not appropriate. Xiao Hua said impolitely. A trace of envy and disappointment flashed in Chang Li Hao's eyes. He quickly said, Thank you, senior brother Xiao, for giving sister Xiumei this celestial device. She is more suitable for this celestial device than I am. I dare not compete with her. Thank you, senior brother Xiao, for bestowing me with the magic tool. Chang Xiumei finally calmed down and bowed toward Xiao Hua. There's no need to be polite. Since you follow me to Tianmen Mountain, it's fate. Take it. Xiao Hua waved his hand. In the distance, Xie Yuji and the others were dumbfounded. They had gauged the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain, thinking that Xiao Hua was the instigator and wanted to obtain this mystic instrument. But Xiao Hua didn't even look at it before throwing it to a 9th-layer Qi refining female cultivator. This was really beyond their expectations. Could it be that Xiao Hua was just putting on show? Everyone thought at the same time. On the other hand, Chang Li Hao and the others puffed out their chests, their faces full of glory. Although they didn't get the celestial device, Chang Xiumei did. She was also a disciple of Mo Yun Village. Mo Yun Village's strength was 1 level higher. Well, everyone, because fellow Daoist Xiao was 1 step ahead and exposed Xingzio's plot, Xiang was also saved by him, which solved the big problem of our Tianmen Mountain. Come, let me propose a toast to fellow Daoist Xiao. Everyone, let's have a toast. Huang Tianle said with a smile on his face. Good, let's toast to fellow Daoist Xiao. Everyone suppressed their emotions and raised their cups. I don't dare. This is Miss Meng Xiang's fate. Even if I didn't come, someone else would. Xiao Hua smiled and waved his hand, secretly putting the 3rd wine cup into his space. All right, it's a bit noisy here. I'll open the array of the Vermilion Bird Palace and let Xiang, and the others go out to rest. We'll continue the banquet here. Huang Tianle put down the wine cup and slapped his hand. He first took out a light red elixir and swallowed it, then took out the vermilion bird statue. However, when Huang Tianle activated his Fa Li and the vermilion bird's scarlet brilliance once again sprayed towards the surroundings of the Vermilion Bird Palace, the flames on the walls did not gradually subside as Huang Tianle had expected. Instead, they burned even more fiercely. Ouch! Huang Tianle's face changed slightly. He rolled his eyes and smiled. I just activated the array and consumed a lot of my magic power. Everyone, please wait for a moment. Then, he took 2 more elixirs and activated the statue again. Unfortunately, the situation was still the same as before. Fellow Taoist Huang, what's going on? Su Mingyu, who was the closest, had already seen that something was wrong and hurriedly asked, could it be that the array can't be opened? Fellow Taoist Huang. Fellow Taoist Huang. Everyone who had seen the vermilion bird flame array was shocked and hurriedly asked. This? Huang Tianla smiled bitterly and said awkwardly, I really don't know why. I can't open the array. Quick, let Huang Meng open it. Xie Yuqi hurriedly urged. Huang Tianla shook his head. This vermilion bird flame array can only be opened by Foundation Establishment Huang family disciples. Xiang'er is only at the peak of qi refinement, so she can't open it for now. What should we do? Everyone stood up. Tonight was really not safe. Fellow Taoists, don't worry. Huang Tianla said with a smile, although I can't open the array, no one will come in from the outside. With this array protecting us, nothing will happen. As long as I recover my magic power, I'll naturally be able to let everyone out. Oh, I see. As soon as Huang Tianla's words came out, many of the panicked cultivators calmed down. Although they were still whispering, the panic on their faces had lessened. Senior brothers Xiao, Chong Li Hao, and the others were a little surprised, but when they saw Xiao Hua sitting there, they felt as if they had eaten a weight. They didn't panic at all and only asked in a low voice, it can't be something big happened again, right? How would I know? Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Today's events were really full of ups and downs. First, it was Shang Qinghe, then it was Zheng Ziho. Just as the situation was about to turn around and things were going to be perfect, they encountered the vermilion bird flame array that couldn't be opened. Don't be impatient. Let's wait and see first, Xiao Hua said in a low voice, and these words were like a reassuring pill. Chong Limin and the others sat down very quietly. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you really don't show your true colors. You really let me see. Yu Qian, who was at the side, seemed to be a little scared. After hesitating for a long time, he came over and smiled apologetically. Hee, fellow Taoist you, didn't I say it was just a coincidence? It's really. Xiao Hua spread his hands and said with a smile. How could Yu Qian believe him? He smiled apologetically and said, there seems to be something wrong today. Fellow Taoist Xiao, if there's anything, I hope you can hold back a little. Chapter 1940. Yes, I understand. Xiao Huan nodded slightly. Thank you, fellow Taoist Xiao. Yu Qian heaved a sigh of relief. He raised his hand and brought the table closer to Xiao Hua. His disciple also sat to the left of Chong Li Hao and the others. Fellow Taoists, Huang Tianla still had a smile on his face. My Tianmin Mountains disciples are to your left. If anything happens, we will definitely be in front of you. Just as Huang Tianla finished speaking, a cultivator's scream came from a corner of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. When everyone looked over, they couldn't help but turn pale with fright. They saw a young male cultivator around the 6th layer of qi refining, holding his stomach and rolling on the ground in pain. His entire forehead was covered in sweat, and his face was abnormally ferocious, as if he was in incomparable pain. Fellow Taoist, just as the Tianmin Mountains disciples were about to walk over, they heard the cultivator yell, "It's so painful that I want to die." He clenched his hand tightly on the ground. On his palm, there was an oval-shaped, 9-colored spot, which looked very strange. The cultivator's fingernails were all broken by the hard crimson ground. The cultivator raised his head and spat out a mouthful of stinky black blood. He immediately lay on the ground, no longer moving. When the Tianmin Mountains disciples turned over the cultivator's corpse, they saw that the cultivator's face was covered in black strands. Moreover, his entire face quickly withered and soon shrunk into a ball. The poison. Suddenly, an unknown cultivator exclaimed in shock. This is the poison of the 9-headed dove. But before this cultivator's voice fell, a series of screams came from the other corners of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Another few cultivators around the 6th layer of qi refining were poisoned. Huang Tianle, this is... Su Mingyu and the other Foundation establishment cultivators were shocked when they saw this. They hurriedly checked their bodies and found that the poison had already entered their bodies. They couldn't help but be furious. Huang Tianle's face was pale and his eyes were dull. He smiled bitterly and said, "Everyone, not to mention you, I have also been poisoned." As he spoke, he raised his hand. Sure enough, on Huang Tianle's palm, a 9-colored spot appeared intermittently. It was the poison of the 9-headed dove. "Father, the boy is not poisoned," Huang Liang hurriedly said. "Grandfather, the boy didn't either," Huang Mengxiang also said in a low voice, but his gaze was slightly worried as he glanced at Xiaohua. "Father, your daughter-in-law doesn't have one either," Yang Yu hurriedly added. Huang Tianle rolled his eyes and raised his voice. "Which fellow Taoist hasn't been poisoned yet?" "Huang Tianle, this is all your fault. With the exception of your son, who else hasn't been poisoned?" Several cultivators swore, gnashing their teeth. Reporting to the patriarch, "We didn't." The Huang family's disciples standing nearby bowed and said, "That's strange." Huang Tianle scratched his head. It was as if yellow mud had fallen into his crotch. He couldn't explain it clearly. "And this Xiao hasn't been poisoned." Xiaohua's eyes flashed with anger, but he forcefully suppressed it. He coldly stood up and waved his hand. 3 wine cups filled with dark green spirit wine were lined up in a row. He asked, "This Xiao doesn't like spirit wine. I didn't drink these 3 cups of spirit wine. I presume that the 9-headed dove's poison was placed in these spirit wine." "Fellow Taoist Huang, how do you explain this?" "Spirit wine?" Huang Tianle looked at the spirit wine on the table and was somewhat surprised. "Fellow Taoist Huang, if you don't give this Xiao an explanation and cure my junior sister's poison, don't blame this Xiao for being ruthless and washing Tianmen Mountain with blood," Xiaohua coldly said. When Huang Mengxiang heard that Xiaohua hadn't been poisoned, she was happy at first. However, after hearing Xiaohua's threat, her beautiful eyes looked at the unusually calm Shui Shui. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, don't worry. This poison really wasn't done by this Huang. If it was done by this Huang, how could Xiang Shui and the others be here?" Huang Tianle explained. "This spirit wine is from your Tianmen Mountain. It's a banquet for us. Now that the wine is poisoned, how do you explain this?" Xie Yuqi sneered. At this moment, a Huang family's disciple said in shock, "Patriarch, look at Zheng Ziho." When everyone heard this, they immediately looked at Zheng Ziho, who had almost been forgotten by everyone. They saw strands of black hair growing from Zheng Ziho's forehead. His sweet smile looked strange and terrifying as the black hair spread. Moreover, on his outstretched hands, 9-colored poison spots appeared. "Oh no," Huang Tianle said anxiously. He knew that Zheng Ziho had died here. Everything would be hard to explain to the Ascending Mountains Zheng family. Moreover, "Grandfather, this Zheng Ziho was Qi refining stage 8, right?" Huang Mengxiang said. "Qi refining stage 7 cultivators haven't been poisoned yet. How could he be poisoned? I'm afraid someone wanted him to die early." "Do you still need to say it? Someone must have done it." Su Mingyu sneered. "This person must be in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall." After speaking, he turned to look at Xiaohua. "That's right, fellow Taoist Xiao." Xie Yuqi walked 2 steps forward. Together with Su Mingyu, they stood on both sides of Xiaohua. He said, "In the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, aside from the disciples of the Tianmen Mountains Huang family, you're the only one who hasn't been poisoned. He. And Huang Mengxiang was also awakened by you. I don't think I have such great abilities. I didn't think that an unknown guest of Mo Cloud Village would have such abilities." "Shut up for this young master," Xiaohua said angrily. "Don't think that just because this young master is more capable than you, this young master is heavily suspicious. If you annoy this young master, do you believe that I won't kill you right now?" When Xiaohua saw that Shui Shui had been poisoned, he had already been annoyed. Unfortunately, even though he knew how to refine pills, he had never refined a detoxification pill before. He also didn't have a pill recipe for this kind of pill. He was at his wits' end regarding Shue's situation. Now that he saw that he was being suspected, how could he not be angry? Senior brother, Shue said softly, this is this lowly concubine's fate. Why take your anger out on others? Your anger is making this concubine scared. Xiao Hua's eyes widened in anger. It seemed that he was really on the verge of exploding and killing people in an instant. However, when he heard Shue's words, the corner of his eyes twitched a few times. He forced a smile on his face and turned his head to say gently, Senior brother is just scaring them. Don't worry, senior brother will definitely be able to detoxify you. After he finished speaking, his mind spun rapidly, trying to find a way to detoxify the poison. At the same time, he rummaged through his space for a jade slip. He had just killed Shang Chung of the 10,000 Poison sect and took his storage bag. However, there were many storage bags that didn't belong to him in his space, so he really didn't have time to look through them. Now that he needed to use them, he looked through them to see if there was any way to detoxify the poison. This Xie wants to see. Xie Yushi sneered. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Huang Tianla anxiously say, Fellow Taoist Xie, it's useless to say anything else. It's better to quickly think of a way to detoxify the nine-headed dove's poison. Fellow Taoist Xie, assuming you saw that Xiao Hua's anxiousness wasn't fake, and hurriedly signaled to Xie Yushi with his eyes. Forget it, today's situation is urgent. This Xie won't lower himself to your level. Xie Yushi snorted and turned to walk toward Huang Tianla. Fellow Taoist Huang, at this point, we naturally have to find the culprit. Only he has the antidote to this poison. Li Mingzhu anxiously said, I don't believe it. Fellow Taoist Huang, don't you have any doubts in your heart right now? This Huang sighed, to be honest, really, I can't think of who would do such a thing. This is simply killing my Tianmin mountain. Huang Tianla also said bitterly, what about fellow Taoist Huang Tianming? Where'd he go? Mulan Shan and Lan Ping, who had been silently thinking, suddenly asked. That's right, what about Huang Tianming? He is the steward of Tianmin Mountain, a foundation establishment cultivator second only to fellow Taoist Huang. Everyone suddenly realized, only he could poison the spirit wine. No, it can't be Tianming. Huang Tianla said firmly, this kind of harmful thing to Tianmin Mountain is definitely not done by him. This Huang can guarantee with his life. But what about Huang Tianming? Where is he? Everyone was talking at once. Now that the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall is sealed by the Great Formation, who can activate this formation other than people from Tianmin Mountain? Who else can do such a thing? A cold, owl-like voice sounded in the sky above the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. I didn't expect a group of people who are about to die to be able to guess that this was done by this old man. Tianming, Huang Tianla shouted as if he had just woken up. What's going on? How can this be you? It's really Huang Tianming? Not only Xiao Hua, but even Huang Mang and Yan Yu were stunned. Why can't it be me? Huang Tianming's familiar voice sounded in everyone's ears. Huang Tianla, you must have suspected this old man when Shangqing came out, right? At this time, Huang Tianla's face was indescribably bleak and even a little distressed. He shook his head and said, that thought only flashed through my mind. I definitely didn't think much about you. The Vermilion Bird Flame Formation can't be used. Other than you, the head of the family, isn't this old man the only one who knows? Who else could have revealed it to Shangqing? Huang Tianming said with a smile, but this old man didn't expect that in the end. You still hid it from this old man. You actually used the Vermilion Bird celestial body and your blood essence to activate the Great Formation. Presumably, the head of the Huang family, who has lost all his blood essence, will die in a few days, right? Father. Huang Mang was shocked. Huang Mingxiang was also shocked. Grandfather. Tianming. Huang Tianla looked like he had aged 10 years. He sat shakily on the chair and murmured, Tianming. Huang Mengxiang's matter was naturally done by this old man. It's a pity that Zheng Ziho was too unlucky. He couldn't be the next head of the Huang family, and was actually taken care of by a little foundation establishment stage from Immo Cloud Village. He can only dream of his own great dreams. Huang Tianming was a little annoyed. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have made it so complicated. In the end, I still have to do it myself. Fellow Taoists, this old man's nine-headed dove poison doesn't have to be activated. If nothing unexpected happens, the antidote will be sent up in a while. If you want to blame someone, blame the little foundation establishment stage from Immo Cloud Village. This guy ruined my plan, so I had to poison you all. Old man, Zhu Feng and several other foundation establishment stage cultivators scolded angrily. We came thousands of miles away to help Tianmen Mountain, and you treat us like this? Tianmen Mountain has its own internal conflicts. Why did you poison us? Even if we become ghosts, we won't forgive you. Chapter 1941. Become a ghost? This old man hasn't seen it yet, but today is the 15th day of the 7th month, the legendary Ghost Festival. If you are fated, then go and become a ghost. Wait until you become a ghost, then come find this old man. Huang Tianming said with a smile. Tianming, I've thought about it for a long time, but I still can't understand why you did this. You have no reason. Huang Tianla said with a bitter smile. What's there to think about? Huang Tianming sneered. My cultivation is not worse than yours, and my ability to handle the affairs of Tianmen Mountain is 100 times better than yours. Haven't I been working hard for Tianmen Mountain for hundreds of years? What have you done? Where are my children? Why can't they take charge of Tianmen Mountain? You're not Tianming. Hearing this, Huang Tianla immediately stood up from his chair and said angrily, Who are you? Where's Tianming? What did you do to him? Everyone was stunned. Huang Tianming's voice also calmed down. After a while, he said, This is strange. How do you know that I'm not Huang Tianming? I've been by Huang Tianming's side for 20 years. I've seen all of his actions and remembered them in my heart. Even in the past 10 years, you haven't seen any flaws, have you? Why did you suddenly realize it when I was done today? You're Huang Jingming. Huang Tianla suddenly realized and shouted, 10 years ago, Sai, I understand now. The one who was killed 10 years ago was my brother. You were the one who did it. That's right. You finally thought of this. Huang Tianming's voice sounded. Huang Jingming, the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain has treated you well. We trained you for decades and finally sent you to my brother. In the future, your children will be the children of the Huang family's concubines. Your cultivation seems to have been passed down by the Huang family, right? Why did you do such a thing to kill the children of the Huang family? Do you think this old man will say such things? Huang Jingming's voice was filled with pride. If it wasn't for the fact that this old man wanted to personally witness your deaths and the feast that this old man had designed, this old man wouldn't even have shown himself. Not only was the Huang family of Tianmen Mountain exterminated by this old man, but they were also hunted down by other cultivation families or sections. Not even a blade of grass was left. Hiss! Huang Tianla sucked in a breath of cold air and bitterly smiled. Huang Jingming, from the tone of your voice, I'm afraid you have a great enmity with my Huang clan. However, this old man has never provoked anyone like this in his entire life. How could this old man? It's true that you haven't offended anyone in this lifetime, but what about the previous generation of your Huang family? What about the previous generation? What about the generation before that? Have they always been good people in the country of Xi? Huang Jingming sneered and said, Look at the entire Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Which one of them doesn't have blood on their hands? This old man will kill all of you to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. Don't use your divine sense to search for me. I wasn't even in the array. Huang Jingming scolded coldly. Xiao Hua and the others could only helplessly withdraw their divine sense. Xiao Hua had a lot of jade slips in his hands, but he didn't have any pill recipes. He also didn't have any traces of the detoxification pill. As for the nine-headed dove, there was no record of it. Xiao Hua had so many spiritual herbs in his space, but he didn't know which ones were effective. Continuous screams came from a corner not far away. Presumably, they were from low-level chi refining cultivators. Senior Marshal Brother. Seeing Xiao Hua's gloomy face and the jade slips he kept taking out, Xue took a step forward and reached out to hold Xiao Hua's hand. She calmly said, "Meeting you is the greatest happiness of this concubine. Being able to accompany you for so long, even at death's door, this concubine is already satisfied. You don't need to worry. Everything is fated, this concubine." Xue. Xiao Hua clenched his teeth and looked at the vermilion bird great array. This great array was very strict and imposing. Xiao Hua just swept it with his divine sense and knew that this array, which was said to be able to kill nascent soul cultivators, absolutely lived up to its name. With his cultivation, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to break it. There are too many people who can become enemies with my Tianmen Mountains Huang clan. This Huang really can't guess who you are. Huang Tianla sighed and said, "However, there are so many fellow Taoists here. They are all innocent and didn't participate in the grievances between our two clans. Why do you have to drag them into the water?" "Ha ha, this old man originally didn't plan to do so." Huang Jingming laughed and said, "But by a freak combination of factors, they came here. Moreover, their deaths can be exchanged for the destruction of your Huang clan. So why not? Besides, back then, when my family was destroyed by your Huang clan, which cultivator in the state as she stood up? Now, let them be buried with my ancestor. Isn't that what my ancestor did in the underworld?" Then, he seemed to ponder for a moment and said, "Huang Tianla, this old man won't let you die unjustly. Tell me, how do you know that this old man is not Huang Tianming? If you can tell me the reason, this old man can consider telling you who I am." Obviously, Huang Jingming was very conceited about his decades of planning, but he didn't expect that Huang Tianla could still see through the flaw, which made him very puzzled. Alas, this was originally the secret of my Tianmen Mountains Huang clan. No one will know it in Xiao Er's generation. Huang Tianla smiled bitterly. Since it has come to this, it's not a big deal to say it. Otherwise, Xiao won't know his identity in the end. Father? Huang Liang was surprised. In fact, as early as when this old man took over Tianmen Mountain, my father originally wanted Tianming. Huang Tianla ignored Huang Liang, but said tirelessly, "Tianming is meticulous, and his cultivation is higher than mine. If Tianmen Mountain is in his hands, it will be much stronger than before." However, Tianming grew up with me and was very attached to me. He felt that Tianmen Mountain was mine, and if he took over Tianmen Mountain, he would be taking away my things. Therefore, he threatened my father with his life, insisting that he didn't want my father to abolish his position. My father had no choice but to change his mind and hand over Tianmen Mountain to me. Tianming also swore that day that he would assist me, his elder brother, for the rest of his life, and would never betray me. Tell me, Tianming didn't want the things that were sent him back then, so why does he want them now? Maybe he's not satisfied when he sees that your power is monstrous and you control everything. This old man has to discuss everything with Tianmen Mountain with Tianming. Huang Tianla sneered. Don't you think that this old man has asked you a lot of things over the years? This is indeed. Moreover, this old man's child died early, and I had no children. Xiao was adopted by Tianming, so Tianmen Mountain will belong to Xiao from now on. Tianmen Mountain will belong to Xiao and Tianming will be the heir. How could he take away his son's family business and hand it over to an outsider? Huang Tianla hesitated for a moment, then said, "Therefore, this old man has never doubted Tianming." Chapter 1942. Father, Huang Liang exclaimed, why didn't you tell this boy? What's the difference between telling you and not telling you? I loved you as much as your second uncle did, and Xiang, and the others grew up in front of me. If it weren't for today's incident, I would have never told you. You evil thief, where's my father's corpse? Huang Liang raised his head and shouted angrily. Ha ha! I didn't promise to tell you this. Well, it's fine if you don't tell me. Huang Tianla nodded and said, Tell me, who are you? How did your Huang clan start? Where did your Huang clan's spirit stone veins come from? Huang Jingming's voice became colder and colder. Don't tell me you don't know these things? Spirit stone veins? Huang Tianla pondered. After a moment, he said in astonishment, Oh, your surname is Lan? You're the descendant of Lan clan? It's been so many years. Huh? You old ghost, you still remember my Lan clan? I really underestimated you. The cultivator, called Lan Jingming, said in a strange manner. Alas, since you're the descendant of Lan clan, I have nothing to say. Huang Tianla sighed and said, This old man has checked the ancient records of the clan. For tens of thousands of years, my Huang Tianming Huang clan has done many evil things. However, the thing that this old man despises the most is your Lan clan. Ha ha ha! Lan Jingming laughed wildly and said, Unfortunately, my Lan clan was annihilated by your Huang clan, and only a child is left. It's hard to survive on this Xiaoyu continent, and I don't know how many natural and man-made disasters have happened, but my Lan clan hasn't been completely wiped out. Alas, the heavens are unfair. Why did your Huang clan decline until now? Why can't my Lan clan produce a cultivation genius? It was only at this point that he could kill his enemies with his own hands. All the glory of your Tianmen Mountains Huang clan should belong to my Lan clan. How can you deny it? Of course, it was your Lan clan's ancestor who discovered the spirit stone veins. If it weren't for my Huang clan's ancestor, I'm afraid this place would be the foundation of your Lan clan. Huang Tianla admitted without hesitation. But since you've already tasted the hardships of the world and been haunted by hatred, why do you have the heart to inflict this pain on others? The Huang family of Tianmen Mountain will bear your wrath and release all the other fellow Taoists. How about that? Ha ha ha! How is that possible? Lan Jingming smiled and said, You can all die in there. This old man has already explained the whole story clearly. This old man wants to see how many of you can turn into evil spirits and cause trouble for this Lan. After that, there was no more sound from the array. Sigh, fellow Taoists, I've implicated all of you. Huang Tianla sighed and cupped his hands. At this time, no one cared about the enmity between the Huang and Lan clans. All they wanted was to get rid of their poison. However, the nine-headed dove's poison was famous in the Xiaoyu continent and was extremely rare. Many cultivators had brought along antidotes, but none of their antidotes were effective. Suddenly, Xiaohua's eyes lit up and the jade slip in his hand stopped. After looking at it for a moment, he waved his hand and took out a pink jade bottle. He opened it and sniffed it with his nose before handing it to Shui. He transmitted his voice. This is the antidote of the 10,000 poison sect. It is said to be able to cure all poisons. This 10,000 poison sect doesn't live up to its name. They don't even have an antidote for the nine-headed dove. They only have some poison techniques and poison methods. Thank you, husband. Shui took the jade bottle and looked at it. She frowned and said, Husband, there are only 3 pills inside, but there are 6 of us. Take it first and see if it is effective. If it is effective, let the 2 female cultivators of the Chong clan take it first. I will think of a way, Xiaohua said very decisively. Shui poured out a pill from the jade bottle. She frowned as she looked at the dark and smelly pill. She swallowed it, and a bitter and indescribable taste came from her mouth. Xiaohua looked at her with concern. After waiting for a moment, Shui's eyes flashed with joy. She raised her hand and transmitted her voice. The 10,000 poison sect is really powerful. Although it can't completely cure the nine-headed dove's poison, my life should be safe. Good. Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, The remaining poison can be refined with magic power. Give the pills to Chong Yulian and the others. Yes, husband. Shui smiled and said, But this antidote is really bitter and smelly. If you didn't look at the jade slip, I would have thought it was poison. Oh, Xiaohua's face was filled with joy. He seemed to have thought of something and quickly took out another jade slip. Xue Xue handed the jade bottle to Chang Xiumei and transmitted her voice to her. Naturally, Chang Xiumei and Chang Yulian were overjoyed. They reached out to take it. At the same time, Xue Xue transmitted this matter to Chang Li Hao and the others. Sure enough, Chang Li Hao and the others didn't hesitate at all. They immediately nodded and agreed with Xiao Hua's opinion. Although Xiao Hua didn't particularly care, he was secretly happy when he saw that Chang Li Hao and the others were very affectionate. He didn't help the Chang family for nothing. Xiao Hua took out a jade slip and looked at it for a moment. He transmitted his voice to Xue Xue and said, "Wife, I found a way, but I don't know if it will be effective. Tell me." Although Xue Xue had already cured the poison, she was still happy when she heard that there was a way. As the saying goes, fight poison with poison. If we use another kind of poison to cure the nine-headed dove poison, it should be effective, right? Really? Xue Xue nodded, but then she frowned. However, we have to consider the details. Otherwise, if one poison doesn't work, we'll add another. Won't he die faster? We don't need to try. Xiao Hua looked at Chang Li Hao and the others. Although their cultivation was shallow, they were still above the 10th layer of the qi refining realm. For the time being, they didn't show any signs of being poisoned. He got up and walked toward Huang Tianla. Huang Tianla seemed to have given up. He just sat on a chair with Huang Meng, Yang Yu, and Huang Mengxiang beside him. His face was slightly sad, and Huang Meng's face was extremely gloomy. Xie Yu Jiang and the other Foundation establishment cultivators from Cultivation sects, and Chu Yu Chong and the other Foundation establishment cultivators from cultivation families were divided into two groups. They sat together and discussed something in low voices. However, everyone was frowning. Obviously, they didn't have any useful ideas. When Huang Tianla saw Xiao Hua coming, he quickly stood up and cupped his hands. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, thank you for saving Xiang. Unfortunately, because of my Huang family's matter, I'm afraid you'll be implicated." Then he turned around and said, "All right, Xiang, come and thank fellow Taoist Xiao for his kindness. I wanted to wait until tomorrow morning to thank you, but it seems I won't have the chance." Huang Mengxiang stared at Xiao Hua and walked over with light steps. He bowed and said, "This servant thanks Xiao Senior for his kindness." This servant made Yang Yu frown. Huang Mengxiang bowed and winked at Xiao Hua, making Xiao Hua feel quite embarrassed. Get up, little friend Huang. You didn't forget to thank me in the restriction just now." Xiao Hua waved his hand and didn't let Huang Mengxiang kneel. Huang Mengxiang took the opportunity to straighten up and naughtily stuck out his tongue. He turned around and walked to Yang Yu's side, acting like an innocent and lively girl. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, what's the matter?" Huang Tianla smiled apologetically and said, "This Huang has already given my most powerful magic tool to fellow Taoist. There's nothing else that can satisfy fellow Taoist." Fellow Taoist Huang doesn't have it, but this Xiao has it." Xiao Hua smiled and waved his hand. He took out a jade bottle and handed it to Huang Tianla. "What's this?" Huang Tianla took it with a puzzled expression. He opened the jade bottle, and a faint fishy smell spread out from the jade bottle. Huang Tianla stared at it and scanned it with his divine sense. He still didn't understand and looked at Xiao Hua strangely. "This is the poison of the azure python," Xiao Hua said indifferently. "Azure python? Poison?" Huang Tianla frowned at first, but then he came to a realization. He was pleasantly surprised and said anxiously, "The azure python is a famous poisonous creature in my country of Xi. The poison that an adult azure python spits out is something that even Foundation establishment cultivators can't resist. Although it's inferior to the nine-headed dove, but it can be used to fight poison with poison. Unfortunately, this Xiao is not a doctor nor an alchemist, so I can't use it to make an antidote. I also don't know how to use poison to fight poison, so I'll give it to fellow Taoist Huang," Xiao Hua said with regret. He didn't finish reading the jade slip of the 10,000 Poisons sect, so he really couldn't find a way to use poison to fight poison, so he didn't dare to say anything. Seeing Xiao Hua walk over, Xie Yuji and Chu Yuchang's groups naturally paid attention. By the time Huang Tianla's words reached their ears, a few people had already separated themselves from the two groups and walked over. Fellow Taoist Xiao, this Huang has some experience in using it in his early years. If fellow Taoist is not worried, you can let this Huang test it. Huang Tianla held the jade bottle in his hand and said to Xiao Hua with a smile on his face, "If this succeeds, this Huang will immediately detoxify the disciples of Mo Yun village." "Good." Xiao Hua clapped and said, "Fellow Taoist Huang, using your own body to test the poison can make up for your negligence." Huang Tianla understood and bowed. He was extremely grateful and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, thank you for giving me this opportunity. However, this is fellow Taoist Zhao's merit, so I don't dare to take it all for myself." "Fellow Taoist Huang, what is this?" Xie Yuji and the others came forward and wanted to take the jade bottle from Huang Tianla's hand. Xiao Hua knew that Huang Tianla's Dharma body had used up all of his essence blood and didn't have much magic power left. He snorted and rubbed his right thumb and middle finger together. A ray of magic power shot out and blocked Xie Yuji and Huang Tianla. "Fellow Taoist Xie, what is the meaning of this?" Xiao Hua said coldly. "You want to steal my item in front of me? Why would I want to steal your item?" Xie Yuji was a bit scared, but he looked at the other Foundation establishment cultivators who came with him and said, "Mo Yun village and our cultivation sects all have people who are poisoned. Since you have a detoxification method, you should share it with us and see if it works." That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.